Hello, everyone, and welcome to Being Human. I'm really excited for today's episode. I'm sitting with two incredible men that I've had the honor and pleasure of just meeting in some ways. We met last weekend in a really beautiful way, in a really beautiful setting. And that weekend impacted me in wonderful ways, in really beautiful ways. And I'm really excited just to be here with the both of you to learn a little bit more about you guys and honestly just to share medicine and to share the medicine of your guys' lives. Because I feel like you two are walking medicine in that way. And I understand that everybody's still learning, we're all still learning in that way. And I also see that in you guys as well, the humility and the humbleness from your hearts. And yeah, when I first got the idea to do this, it was like, no way, that would be so good. And honestly, there's a part of me that was a little bit scared. There's a little bit of fear that creeped up for me. And I think that goes into just something that you shared before is like leading from love rather than from fear. We're not going to get into that just now, but it really is like seeing that in me and then making the choice to be like, hey guys, do you want to do this? And it's really cool to hear your excitement around that as well. And so I'm really excited to introduce Dane and Robbie. I'd love to hear a little bit about kind of each of you, just kicking things off, just to build some context of like, who are you,
Well, first, I just want to say thank you for making your way up here and spending your day with us and inviting us to share with you, with each other, and with whoever is out in the universe watching or listening this. And yeah, I also want to speak my intention for being here, which my intention for being here is to share my heart and share whatever medicine may be available in these moments to support anyone listening or viewing this, that they can experience epiphanies, realizations, that seeds can be planted in a good way within their consciousness and psyche that will support their evolution and growth, whatever that might be, upon their path, in alignment with their highest and best good. And to also deepen with both of you. Dane is a good friend of mine, and Ethan's a new friend of mine, and I feel a deep kinship with both of you. And so it's really wonderful to collaborate and share with you guys.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I've been walking this path of being a human, you could say, since I was about 15 or 16 years old. And that's when my father was sick and eventually passed away, and that's what catapulted me out of the illusions of life into really being and into presence. And that set me forth in motion on my life to really just find freedom and find love within myself, knowing that my life wasn't meant to be so dark and full of suffering. And my spirit knew that, and my spirit guided me to many amazing elders and healers and medicine people and friends and community, places, situations, ceremonies that really supported me to become a man of deeper truth and integrity and learning in my life. And that eventually brought me to a threshold of realizing I've been given so much and it's time to give to others. And that's when the path of service began to open for me. And actually the first person I really served was my mother, and shared all that I had gathered in my travels around the world, began sharing with her. Felt very symbolic and wonderful. And yeah, it's been such a wonderful opportunity to serve others, serve the local community, serve people online, help people in their path of knowing themselves and knowing love and living love in a really just heartfelt way that's unique to each of us and also universal. And yeah, I feel that there's lots more I could share and would love to share. And I also would love to, just leave it at that for this moment. So yeah, it's a little bit about me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for sharing, man. I'm excited to, unpack some of those things as well and hear just about some of those experiences that have shaped you. And because even in like a couple of those, it's like, oh yeah, I can relate already, I can relate to some of those experiences or some of those things that you shared or mentioned. And there's a lot of really beautiful things in there. And so thank you for doing the work that you do and being here and being human, Like, thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So my life and who I am from how it's shaped me through younger years, I feel from what I see as not paying attention as a younger person with a bad diet and not much reverence for anything bigger than me or greater. Coming from very high energy, adrenaline junkie, excited youth into some health issues that required me to wake up to something greater, start paying attention and being grateful in my life. That set me on a path to be guided into a healthier way of life, a connection to where others were in a similar frame of bringing presence to their lives, which entailed for me some Indigenous elders, some guides, some teachers. Mainly, I feel like women have shaped my life in a big way, from the love of my mother as a young boy, but also throughout the years of my awakening to being a man, what that looks like. My humanness is becoming a man, and traveling the road of continual, pretty consistent challenges with my health. I found that it was something greater than me trying to wake me up to help me pay attention to the beauty and profoundness of life, the power of what gratitude can bring to you in your life. So I therein had set my path in a foundation of gratitude for just the simple things. You get so into suffering and so many experiences that you forget what it feels like to feel healthy or to feel comfortable in your body. And deepening in the gratitude has helped me bring forth the awareness in my path of being of greater service to others, to those in life, and also is the relation of my intention for coming here, and that listeners, or we may all find a greater depth of relatability and how much healing and camaraderie and connection that brings to human hearts and souls and connections with each other when we find relatability through our experiences, through somewhat of a shared experiences or our stories of our lifetime and our path. And so I come into this container in just deep gratitude also for you, Ethan, for your willingness to come in and open this space, this container with us, and Robbie and I, and also to you, Robbie, and for the opportunity of those who feel to listen or inquire about what's coming up in this segment of Being Human, and in the inspiration of being human and what that might look like for me in the way of stepping forward in my growth and evolution as a young man, in the way of connecting to something greater than me, and that what guides me in the path of love, the divine connection of love, and that through the path of the journey and the adventure of what sovereignty means, and in a safe space held in a container that continues to inspire me and keep me interested each day, keeps me close to the Creator, or close to my dreams, my prayers, my walk of life that I hold sacred. And so in that, it's been a real joy for me. I feel really inspired and in love with life to have any chance or an opportunity to support others in their own growth, their evolution, as a guide, as a coach, or a supportive facilitator, or just a friend. And being a man, being a human, in that brings me great joy and love, and just back to gratitude for being here today, and the inspiration of what this podcast, this session might bring to us. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, man. Thank you. I felt like the sincerity in your heart in that as well. It's just really special. It's like really special that we get to be here and that we get to do this, that we get to share. And I loved what you spoke to. Like there's a theme of like friendliness as well to that, relatability. It's like by sharing, there's a lot of relatability that ends up weaving its way through because we're all human. And so there's kind of two questions that I kind of got that kind of came up to me, or two ways that we can kind of take this. The first was there was a common thread, and it's also the same in my life, where suffering is what brought me to kind of the path in the way, and kind of the initiation, almost so to speak, into that way of walking. And it sounds like it was a similar theme for both of you guys. And so there's kind of like, I see one door opening in that aspect of things, of like, is that always the case? Does suffering always have to lead you to the path? And how did you know, like, did you know at the time where it was leading you? What was that like for you? And really kind of like opening that door just a little bit. And then there's this other door that I see, which just came up of just like, yeah, I'd love to hear kind of like what being human has meant to you and how you've seen that change over the course of your life. And so I'm going to put those two kind of like out on a platter to kind of feast on. And in some ways of like whichever way we feel like taking it, I feel like is a really good direction to head in.
Yeah, I feel like both are topics that I would love to touch on. And I feel that common theme as well of like the suffering. And yeah, I feel like that's a wonderful direction to go in, because suffering is something that when we can see it from a different perspective can become medicine and can be something that's embraced. And it's, for me, like what I found is my resistance to suffering and the trying to get rid of suffering is what has caused the most suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually what has had patterns and even physical health problems in my life stick, because I was trying to get rid of them and push them away. Because Dane and I were talking about this thing called judgment, and the field of judgment that we can hold around a certain experience, a sensation in the body. Oh, that pain, that symptom is bad. It shouldn't be here. It's not what it's, my body should be this way. And all these conditions we put on ourselves. Then there's the feelings, the feelings or the emotions that may arise that we then have a judgment or sensation around. And then the thoughts and the mental images that can arise that we then have a label around. It's good or bad. And when we see suffering as this doorway of initiation, and this suffering as actually an invitation to surrender more deeply into love and into a greater power, and to see that the parts of us that are in suffering are the parts of us that are experiencing separation and what some would call ignorance or fear. And that separation is an invitation to bring love to those parts and places. So what I found is, rather than pushing away the suffering, is to offer love to it, and actually in a way to embrace it. And it's like, oh, well, if I embrace it, won't that make more of it or make it worse? And you'd think that was the case, and it's actually the opposite. In the embracing of it, it suddenly shifts and dissolves. And then there's this beautiful opening of a lesson, and then a freedom and an elevation of our state of being into a state of greater beingness in love, in joy, in fun, in beauty, and all the lovely experiences of being a human. And yeah, I feel you, Dane, having some things to contribute there.
Oh, well, just there's been so many different ways that I felt like suffering has made me pay attention, right? It's like it brings you into such a state of surrender if you can really deal with it. And even having the physical symptoms that I had, I couldn't push them away. So it's like, I was locked into this place of, how can I deal with this? How do I deal with this physically? And then it was like, different levels, so many different levels of suffering, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. And like the mental suffering, there's so much of what we try and figure out or understand, or with grief of losing someone, how that hits us mentally and emotionally. And so I feel like it brings whatever level of which we can identify the level of suffering, there's a gift there, right? The greatest gifts in my life have been through the suffering, and I didn't you don't realize it at the time, but there's such a richness when you can kind of look back and go, wow, would I have really paid attention? Would I have really gotten it if I hadn't had such a hard time with that? And so the mental aspect for me, when I was going through my perception of things that wasn't feeling like I was accepting it or it was okay, I had to deal with the constructs and narratives in my judgment, like you're saying, in my mind around this thing that I perceived out of balance and in a field of judgment. And so it caused me to tune in more to what my thoughts were, how I was thinking about myself, how I was thinking about this experience, which therein pushed me into, wow, this way that I'm thinking isn't really conducive to my health as well. So I had to learn how to control my thoughts or just create space for my mind mentally and see somehow could I bring in a perception, because I'm mentally all tied up in this judgment of freedom, of peace. And then emotionally with, say, grief, there was this, oh, it's bringing up so much for me emotionally. I can't let go, or I have this loss. But when I flip it on its head, it's like, wow, this could be the greatest gift for me to be able to actually become more emotionally present, and with presence. So I feel like suffering really called me into different levels of presence, mentally, emotionally, especially emotionally, to have to feel all these things, right? And for me, it was a lot of how I was perceiving feeling. As you were speaking, we've spoken so much about emotion. And when we get down to emotion, for me, when I got down to it, it was basically just pure feeling in a construct of judgment. So if I took the feeling out of judgment, it didn't have so much of a label as an emotion, that I could actually just tune into it as a pure feeling. And when I got out of that field of judgment of it, I could actually feel more of myself, feel more of what that feeling had to offer me as that power. And then it kind of brought me out of the victim state. Suffering can oftentimes bring us into the victim, that trigger, that polarity. And so many people get caught in that. I got caught in it. Most of my life was caught in the victim of, I have been under the effect and my reaction to that. And so I learned how through the emotions and suffering, especially physically, I got into a place of bringing awareness to, oh, I can see that I feel victimized or something outside of me I'm under the influence, the effect of. How can I take accountability for that and be in the cause, the causality, the causation of my life, my original cause, even going back further. And it took me to recognize being able to say, well, okay, there's the victim. And the victim for me was like, oh, now I can celebrate it because I can actually see it for what it is for me. And I was able to practice. And if we can see the victim as actually our power trying to return to us, taking it out of the field of judgment, it's actually a beautiful thing. And it may not create as much suffering or intolerance to that teaching or that lesson, right? And through physically, it was a big part where it made me pay attention more to my physical body, that it was saying, wow, if I hadn't had this suffering, this ailment, this broken whatever or health issue that I had gone through that made me really have to pay attention, I might not presence the holy vessel that I'm in, the gifts that I have and being in a body and what that means to be actually embodied. So it's been a really fun interplay. Now that I can look back on it, I can say, oh, it's been fun. Through the time, though, it was just the most grueling experience of your life. You're like, how did I put myself through that? How did I call on this experience to learn these lessons? But the greatest gifts through our life that we can share oftentimes come through the greatest sufferings if we can translate them as learned from or learning from them, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for me, I appreciated what you were sharing about the victim, because everyone has that energy in them to a certain degree. And often it can be perceived as like a negative aspect of ourself. And it is a space of separate, like a space that feels powerless. However, we want to acknowledge it and be like, oh, I'm feeling victimized by this situation in my life or this person. And maybe it's something literally happening inside of us that we feel powerless to. Maybe it's something outside of us that's impacting us. And what I find in that is powerlessness. There's only one source of power in the universe, as I understand it. This is just my own understanding. And through this understanding, I found it's been the greatest source of freedom from suffering in my life. So I'm not claiming to know the truth of it. That said, this is what I've learned through teachers especially, is that the one source of power in the universe is God, or a creator, or a source. There's many words, and none of the words are actually it. And that source is the source of power in the universe. And so that part of us that feels victim in life feels powerless, because that part of us has bought into this idea of being separate from that, or has been conditioned into believing that it's separate from that. And it's like a child that's lost and afraid. And then we judge it for being afraid because it's lost. Like if a child was lost in the grocery store and it's crying, you'd be like, oh my God, let me help you. Like, let me help you come back into union with your parents because you're afraid and lost. And what child wouldn't be? And then we feel a victim inside of ourselves and we judge it and say like, oh, you shouldn't be this way. You should, be more free or empowered, or being a victim is bad or wrong or something. And there's a lot of that subconscious programming. Even if consciously we know, like, oh yeah, it's okay to be a victim, there's a lot of subconscious judgments in people's energy field and that we can carry, where that energy comes up and there is that judgment and it creates a tension. And so that part of us wants to be reunited. It's asking for reconnection. And another way to talk about God is as love. So reconnecting to love, reconnecting to wholeness, reconnecting to that divinity. And when that happens, it's one of the most satisfying experiences of like coming home to oneself. And what I've found is that it's a path that we always are walking, that we have many layers of our being and many aspects of ourselves. We all have, multiple personalities, especially we're all Geminis, right? So we can relate. You're a Gemini? No, you're not? Oh, you're Libra. Well, me and him are Geminis. Yeah, that's a perfect balance. Yeah, right? Cool, yeah, you're perfect balance between it. Yeah. Anyway, so we're Geminis, so we have the twins. So when there's kind of like 4 of us hanging out when we're hanging out together. Sometimes it multiplies and there's 8 of us and we'll have all sorts of crazy conversations.
You can speak for yourself. I'm individuated perfectly. No.
And so
that's a Gemini thing to say.
Right, yeah. So, okay. Sorry, go ahead. And so, we all have these multiple layers and levels of our personality and being, and like there can be a layer of our being that knows ourselves to be connected to all that is, that source. And then there can be another layer that simultaneously feels separate and experiences itself as separate. Mm-hmm. And so that's where we want to have a lot of grace and compassion for ourselves and just be present with what is. And also this is what causes like a lot of bypassing too, is like someone understands maybe on a mental level that all is God, because it's pretty easy to mentally understand that. Like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like if everything came from one source and that one source is God, then it makes sense everything is God. But there's no real power in that. The power is when you feel that in your heart and when you feel that in your cells and in your body and in your emotions and in your mind and beyond your mind, and you feel a union and communion. That is a deeper knowing. And even then, that's still not even knowing it. You never know it. And so it's like a teacher says, if a student says, oh, I already know that, it's like they're not a teachable student because they already know. And so constantly being in that path of like acknowledging our attainments and also realizing that we still have so much to learn and we continue to know it and learn it and understand it. So what I see is there's this bypassing that can happen where we maybe have an experience of that. And it's like, oh yeah, I ate some mushrooms and talked to God. I know that everything's God, but then you live your life and you're maybe still living out the same habits and patterns and negative cycles and miss like use of your energy or mistreating others or yourself. And it's like, well, no, if you really knew that, you would be a saint, So like the humility is so important to be like, oh yeah, I had an experience of that and I'm learning it. I'm going to continue to learn it. To know God is a wonderful path and something that is a deepening always. So that's how I perceive it too, like in what Dane was sharing about seeing that victim as, I really love how he talks about it, a part of us that's a part of our power wanting to return to us, a part of our essence that's been separate from God that's like, hey, I want to come back and be part of the circle again. And when we embrace it like that, it's really potent. It's really beautiful. And we realize that like everyone just wants love, really. And it's the same with our own being. Like all parts of us just want love. And so if we can give that to it ourselves and we can give that to others, you're going to bring the most value this world could possibly experience. That's what everyone really needs and wants. So.
Yeah, it seems like there's such an aspect of how we're in so much judgment in life and we're judging ourselves for being in judgment. But then there's an aspect that our judgment's really important to have a discerning in that judgment. But when we're lacking love within ourselves, obviously there's a part of ourselves that maybe feels judged or separate or as the victim, as you're saying. So it's that place that I always come back to. It's like, I'm always learning this one. This one's always on the path of how do I stay in a field of love, but honor the parts of myself that don't feel loving or loved and recognize it as judgment. that there's a place in judgment, just as the victim. The victims really say our power trying to return to us in a field of judgment. But how is it that we get out of the field of judgment? What is that? Would it be suggestions of daily practices or mantras or a state of mind, right? It's like there's so much lacking in our presence in judgment that if we had that attention to turn into presence of just straight love, there might be more spaciousness for us to grow, right? And that victim to return home, or the integration of things. That's we've talked about, it's like one of my favorite things to speak about. It's not clearing or getting rid of, oh, this is coming up, so I'm just going to block it out, or I've screamed it out and I dealt with it. No, it's coming up for a reason. If we really have an intuition and a connection to something greater than us, and we're willing to be on the humble path of learning, being available to something surfacing and just presencing it with attention oftentimes can bring us into that place that it really just is there for us to learn from, right? And then we go about, well, how is it that I learn from this? Well, for me, if I can just bring it back to love and say, okay, I can see the edges within me wanting to love that, or see that part of myself that I don't really love or I don't really like. And it's this, well, there's the judgment again. So if I can, in the identification of the judgment, I can allow actually more love into my life just by presencing. And then which surfaces, it's like, wow, how is this really here to help me? Can I see this as a positive? Even if it's like, oh, this disease happened, or, oh, I've injured myself, or this calamity is happening in my life. Is it there really to serve me, or is my victim going to come up? Great. If my victim comes up and I can identify it, that's just another part of me that needs love and attention, because it's just the field of judgment. So I really resonate with that aspect of like how so much of us are stuck in a field of judgment that's just really taking it out of context in the construct narrative where we think we can need to control it or put it as labeled something, right? And you, Robbie, have brought in so much presence into your path in life and relatability for me that I've seen where what comes up and through you're able to presence in a way that's integratable and it's very practical. And that's something I really look to in my life, with being able to be gentle on myself, give myself space and compassion and time for that. And oftentimes that is the crux of that, of flipping it, is me identifying where I'm in judgment of myself or an experience or someone else.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that and seeing me in that. And my inspiration to share in this moment is just like so much gratitude to the teachers and elders and people along my path. Like there's no way I could ever be where I'm at without the epic and amazing and beautiful human beings and guides, which is such a core part of being human, is like having people that guide us and that people we can build that field of trust with. And you as well, Dane, have been an amazing resource.
Honored.
And yeah, that's what I love in friendship and brotherhood too, is like finding those people that we can learn from each other and grow together, and support each other and point things out and be like, hey, have you looked at this? Or like, hey, this is something I noticed this, what's going on for you? And sometimes it'll really help catalyze someone, just that loving inquiry and learning to lovingly inquire into ourselves as well, right? Like, oh, what's this coming up? Being curious, right? That's one of the solutions I've found for judgment, especially within myself, is like, and with others, like I've had situations where people have like, done things to me or said things about me or to me that are like, hurtful and bring up that victim in me. And then I've said, and I'm curious, like, what are they going through? Like, I'm really that victim, like, I'm really focused on my own pain and sorrow. And like, what are they going through? Oh, wow, maybe they're hurting more than I am right now. And like, maybe I'm actually judging them, and maybe I'm judging myself too. And perhaps it would be wise for me to send some love their way instead, while still acknowledging the part of me that's maybe pissed.
It's got the trigger, right?
Or the part of me that's sad or depressed or whatever, right? Like feels beaten down, or and like holding that multidimensional or paradoxical part of ourself, of like simultaneously feeling upset and also being in love is like a real razor's edge. Something that it's not always possible or easy. However, it's good to realize like it doesn't have to be so black and white. We can authentically send love and also authentically be angry and own that anger and integrate it. and maybe do that and then send love. It's a good way to do it.
Yeah.
And so in that, I found in my own path as well that the field of judgment is what we were talking about at the beginning too, where judgment is based on basically, as I understand it, an idea of good and bad.
Mm-hmm.
And as humans, we have a primal nature that labels this thing as good and this thing as bad based on our either pain or pleasure from it. And what's interesting is that sometimes we can we can judge something as good and bad.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, in some of my healing, when I was a teenager and when my father was dying, I had a lot of grief and a lot of physical symptoms. And I was in and out of the hospital and having a lot of digestive things happening in my life and really struggling. And at that time, through that suffering, it actually brought me to the path because it forced me. Because it was like, wow, either I'm like going to take drugs the rest of my life and surgeries, or I start changing the way I've been living. And I either live my life depressed and close-hearted, or I open myself to joy. And so to me, the answer seemed quite simple. It's not always that easy for people who are simple. Just in that moment, it was like, yes to healing, yes to joy, even though I didn't really even know what joy was. So that being said, there was part of me that actually judged the grief and problems as a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that actually was part of what blocked healing, because I was like, oh, there's part of me that wants this because this was my ticket to freedom, because it catalyzed me into freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this strange subconscious programming where on the surface, it's like, this sucks, this is bad, I wish it wasn't happening. But then there's a part of the psyche underneath it that's like, oh, this is good. This is what brought healing into my life. This is what catalyzed me. And so actually there's a subconscious programming of wanting more of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then that subconscious wanting more is actually then manifesting more because it's actually an intention.
Mm-hmm.
And clearing that and clearing it out of good and bad and just seeing it as all divine, all is God, everything is God, everything is happening exactly as it needs to be, and trusting in that divine source, and trusting that when things aren't going the way we want it, good things will come. And when things are going and it's so bright out, we need to put sunglasses on, to just enjoy that. Enjoy the vacation of not experiencing suffering, and not to get attached to it, because the clouds might come, it might get cold, and the sunglasses might get taken off for a little while. And that's like the waxing and waning of the path. And we tend to then push away the negative moments of our life and fear it because we believe, oh, this is just how life is now, and this sucks, so I need to get rid of it. And then when things are good, we the human nature is to grasp onto it and be like, oh, that I want life to always be this way. I hope life is always this way. It's always this good. And then both of those actually tend to push away the good and call in more of the negative, you could say, or the positive negative. So just really finding what the word that's come through this year is equanimity. Being in a state of equanimity, that when life is great, enjoy it. When life is bad, try to enjoy it, or at least be in it and harvest the gems and jewels and fruits of it, and go through it with an open heart and joy, and tends to go a lot quicker, actually. It's an interesting thing. So for me, I found that judgment is something that is also part of a piece of myself that's afraid. Because it's afraid of losing that good thing and experiencing that bad thing, or the perception of the good and bad thing. And it's kind of this high horse fear, what I found judgment. Because when you're judging, you're kind of like, oh yeah, I know the truth. I know this is good and this is bad. And it's kind of like not a prideful aspect of fear, because we don't want to acknowledge that we're a scared little boy or girl that's, and that's why it can be such a edge that tricks us. And so labeling it as fear brings an edge to it as well. It's like, oh, I'm afraid. Okay, that's interesting, because often when we're judging, we don't actually feel afraid in that moment. It's not like, oh, I'm anxious, so I'm judging. It's kind of like, oh, I'm all that, I know the truth. So, yeah. And one of the things we were talking about yesterday was that me and Dane were going for a walk, talking with the ravens, and Dane was we were sharing about judgment and discernment. And that how we can use judgment to discern choices in our life and what's the truth of a situation. And I just want to throw the feather your way, the spark your way.
Is there something that we want to fly with in that? Because there's so much with discernment and judgment, right? Like sometimes we just don't know the difference. And I love the way you were talking about the consciousness of how that part of ourself that's in judgment is just maybe needs love. And the parts of ourselves that we often just don't give enough love to, we can find ourselves in more judgment of. Or how you started the conversation with the teachers and people who were around and our relatability and what we learned from. And as you were saying that, I kept coming back to this, like, and what some of the medicine for you, as we've worked with, and making medicine on ourselves. And we talk about this is like, how can we give ourselves a little more credit? You know, and so many of us indigenous ways or ceremonial ways or guided by teachers, we've put ourselves in the name of humility below people, right? And so much of this prayer that we've been walking with, this intentionality, is how can we create more equanimity in our lives, not only with and for others, but really for ourselves? And how much of these subconscious beliefs are held in this place of judgment because we're just not giving ourselves enough credit. And there's so many of us that have this martyr, wounded healer, or we're here of service and the serving in this path. And we really give so much more than we have to give, in a sense of like, because we're not really giving to ourselves. And walking the path of integrity, I believe and feel, is actually receiving twice as much as that you give. And I say that to some people are like, whoa, like that's hitting my edge. How do you do that? I'm not going to be able to do that. And like start offering that. Well, starting to have that perception of self-recognition or self-credits is just about stopping giving so much to others. So you can actually find a placement of what presence, time, and energy you can really need to give to yourself. And so many people have such a loving heart and they empathize and have so much sympathy and give so much to others through this. And I've felt that sympathy and empathizing is a certain giving of attention or energy in a perception that something is not in its perfection. Right? In the difference of having divine compassion, there's a placement of trusting and knowing the God within them and the God within me is in its right, perfect, aligned order, and that we have actually a healthier boundary or containment within that. So that goes along with a lot of things that I feel in my life on how I've just given so much energy and attention away to others when I really just needed to give it to myself. And through that, I found there's so much that I still am exploring about myself that I don't know, you know, and that's a vulnerable thing. It's like, wow, you know, at a certain age, elders or people were saying, yeah, it's time to teach now. Step into being a teacher and lead. And I'm like, whoa, I don't know enough about myself to even, how do I do that? And one teaching that was offered to me was like, if you're committed to your self-inquiry, there's always going to be something, if you're open-hearted, that someone can benefit from. And I found that with, you know, peers, younger generation, elders, all the walks of life, that if I can give myself that, I'm in a heart space and I'm willing to learn, and I still don't know, then there's so much more to learn. One of the greatest teachings, you know, I worked and walked with way back in the 90s, some elders were like, yeah, nephew, once you really realize that you really don't know anything at all, then you just might know something. You know, stay right there. And so it's also fine balance, like giving yourself enough knowing and love and credit where you're making medicine on yourself. This is what we've talked about, the ways of medicine, you know, and it's not about a sacrament or a certain plant, or it's kind of a way of life. And I feel like the medicine of which we all need in that way is witnessing each other, being all together, finding a relatability, a collaborative in a heart space that we can be nurtured by. And I say that as making medicine on yourself. What is it that we can consistently or in a practical way find a continuity, a rhythm, a flow that we can practice or give to ourselves in some routine that nurtures that part of ourself that feels lacking or is in a field of judgment or doesn't feel worthy of. And so that, bringing it back to, you know, the field of judgment and discernment, there's also a fine line with like, you know, discerning how much you can give to other people. Or, you know, there's a big question that I feel I've always been asking and walking with is like, how do we know what's our intuition and what's our fear? Or what's our intuition and what's discernment? And where these things overlap? And this is one of my greatest inspirations of learning about my own intuition and what that truly means. And taking myself into accepting the part of myself where judgment comes up. Oh, there's where I need to be loved. I can find those qualities that are just needing to be loved, that if I actually recognize them with love, they become a power or a tool. So I can actually tune into more of my own intuition. And that, for me, intuition requires me to be more present to myself and just real and honest with myself. And that, for me, comes down to self-love, presencing the self-love, and giving myself actually more credit than my mind or my perceptual awareness might think is okay or I've done in the past. And there's this energy, like so many of us feel like we have ourselves. It's not okay to love ourselves or give ourselves credit. Our ego might get too much recognition. It might run away with us, or it might hurt someone, or it might not be received. But we have ourselves on these hooks, like we're power trippers or manipulators or control freaks, or we're going to harm someone. But that might really be a place of inquiry, like you're speaking about, of that innocent part of ourselves that really just wants attention and love in a very specific, unique way that only we know how to love ourselves, right? We're the only ones that have that awareness on what kind of love and how that love can nurture that part of ourselves that can help us be more integrated with things that are surfacing emotionally, physically, mentally, or spiritually. I believe these things and feel these things come to the surface so they can actually teach us and help us be more integrated as humans. And that, for me, is where all the suffering has came in. Like, the suffering has been the greatest gift for me, and the ways of, I don't know. I pretty much feel like I know that I would not have learned as much as I've learned in life unless I would had to have consistent sufferings. And I tell stories or share things about my life. You're like, wow, that's amazing. You've been through that. And I'm like, yeah, I was really stubborn, not really proud of it. I had to go through that much to wake up and pay attention. So it's kind of reestablishing our field in that way for me, and finding a place of presence and nurturing that love, and looking at the practicalities of, we find our field of judgment is like, oh, just accept that, just surrender to that, just trust that. We use these words, right? But wait, what's that mean? Let's go into that. Like, how do we just actually do that without just saying someone to do that?
Yeah.
So the practical steps on how we can actually initiate this sovereign, independent, empowered way of life really inspires me and creates a great inquiry.
Yeah, which I think would be a lovely thing to get into. I feel like, because you guys, like, there's so many beautiful things that was spoken about this. Like, first of all, I love, like, it almost sounds like there's no bad parts, So it's like the part that comes up that's a victim. It's like, well, that part isn't actually a bad part. It's actually a really beautiful part of us that just gets to be met with compassion, gets to be met with love, gets to be met with those things. And it's like like you said, like our power coming back to ourselves in that way. And it's just really beautiful in that way of, like, even the judgment. Like, the judgment isn't wrong either. It's just a part of us that might be looking for something. This might be fearful of something, that might be scared in that way. And it's just like, ooh, okay, I see you, come back, come back. It's okay, And I love to know, like, how do we bring it from, like, those words of just let it go, just surrender, just see it, and just let it, yeah, yeah. How do we bring it back to something that's practical for maybe somebody who might be listening or tuning into this, that's like, okay, you guys are saying all this, but I'm in suffering right now, or I might be experiencing that in my body and my being. And maybe I'm a little bit caught in that kind of story of, like, or maybe I'm oscillating between, there's a little bit of space between the story of being a victim, and there's a little bit of space of, like, oh, this is happening for me, in just that language, just to be quick, of, like, how does somebody actually begin to kind of move through that? And how did you guys move through that? So whether you guys want to speak to, like, what you did specific, or what you find works, maybe even at this moment in your life as well. Because I also loved how you guys shared that as well. It's like, you guys are still in that path, And it's like, same with me. It's like the very same thing, and walking the very same thoughts, experience. Like, man, I judge people all the time, every day, every day, there's the voice creeps up, and it's just like, oh, hey, like, hi, good to see you. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll share. For me, it's about truth. And what is truth? What is God's truth? Or the Creator's truth? What is truth as the Creator knows that to be? And who is your true self, or who is my true self, my true nature? Because the truth sets us free. So for me, that was the only way that I found freedom from my suffering was through that. And I mean, it's continuing to this day that it's like, if I'm suffering, it's usually because there's an aspect of my being or part of me that's lost touch with that creator's truth, with that truth in the universe within my being. Because what I found was that I was going through, years ago, a really tumultuous time in my life. A lot of, breakups, negativity, dramas, gossip. It's a whole story that I don't feel like sharing. That said, it was very intense for me, and I felt that there was so much judgment about myself, and I was being so hard on myself, and I was taking on all these things that other people were projecting onto me, and I was willingly carrying them, basically the scapegoat. And not that I was innocent in that. I had my own things that I needed to be accountable for. However, it was way out of balance. I was taking responsibility for a whole slew of things that weren't my own, and it was really dark. It was a really dark time, and I didn't really know how to navigate it. I felt like I was a really bad person, like I was wrong. Like I really was being so hard on myself. And that was when I met one of my teachers, who was my Qigong teacher, actually. And he helped me to break through those illusions, actually, by laughing. We just laughed a lot. I would tell him all the stories I was telling about myself and the stories other people were telling about me, and he would just laugh. And it was like, for me, that was medicine. He's like, man, and he would always be like, man, I love working with you because I can't laugh when other people are here because it usually would hurt someone's feelings. But because I could be there with him and just like knowing that like he's not laughing at me, he's just laughing at the illusion of life, the dream, and how we caught up we get in it. That's a real laughter medicine that healed me, where I was like, whoa, this guy, I'm taking this so seriously, and this guy's just laughing, having the best time ever as I'm telling him these things. And, usually a counselor or someone you share these things with, it's like, oh, that's so heavy and hard. That must be really hard for you. And he was like, that's ridiculous, and just would laugh. and then I would start laughing. Then I'd be like, oh, maybe it's not such a problem. And we'd talk and walk for about half an hour to an hour around the lake. And then once all those stories were out of my head, we'd do Qigong. And we'd start practicing Qigong, which for us, it was a pathway into truth and a pathway to bliss. And we would, because the mind was no longer holding on to those stories, I would be guided into a deep space within myself that is bliss. That was my true essence, or is my true essence, is all of our true essence. That God, thank God that God is pure love and bliss and just like amazingness. So when we connect with our true essence, it's like, what do you think you're going to find? And so it started to unlock for me, and it was just it was completely amazing. It was just, I had no idea that was possible. And through unlocking that connection to truth, not my truth, that's the truth of my being, the truth that is God within me, that's within all of us. It's not like it's something special in me, it's something special in all of us. And all the masters or, great guides lead us to that source within ourselves. And so through that truth I've found is like, the way I like to think of it is that suffering is like this separation. Suffering is this ignorance. Suffering is darkness. And truth is like a beacon of light. And it shines it into the darkness and helps us to navigate what's here. Because in the darkness, we can't see. So we don't really know what's even going on. And that's why it's so confusing when we're stuck in those patterns or cycles or problems in our life. And that light shines. And what happens to darkness when you shine light on it? Right? So that's what I found for myself as the key and answer. And I continue to practice that. And sometimes I'll go through life where kind of forget that and then get stuck in a pattern or two. And then, oh, I forgot truth. And then that's what my elder taught me, was like, when you find yourself in a situation like that, you go back to truth. And go back to truth. What's the truth here? And then that a lot of people aren't ready for the truth, because truth requires total integrity, or at least the willingness for integrity.
Yeah, right.
And the willingness to be accountable. Because when you stand in the glory of God's truth, it will hold you to the utmost accountability. And that's because God loves us. And that accountability is like medicine. And God's like, I want you to be free. And the accountability is a highway to freedom, so to speak. So the truth holds us to that. And a lot of people, because of the pain and trauma and hardship they've had in their life, it's very hard to be accountable sometimes, because being accountable is really facing some really painful places inside of ourselves. And that's where we want to remember that, like, that pain within us, it's not who we actually are. It's an experience we're having, and it's not to downplay it, because it's a real part of our human experience. And when we're stuck in it, it feels especially real. And it's good to remember it's not who or what we actually are. That's what I found.
I love that accountability too, right? Like the ability to account, to take note, to track that presence, and in the responsibility of being accountable, ability to respond, that presence of truth. Like, I really appreciate that. It was something that came up for me when, almost 30 years ago, when I wasn't being responsible to my own self. I was pretty self-absorbed and like just young and surfing in Hawaii, and my energy was all over the place, but it was all about the external experience. And I found it took me being in a situation with someone who wasn't healthy, and they would ask me to help them heal. My energy was just way more open, and I wasn't aware of my internal experience. I was very wrapped up in this external reality, being, 20 years old, or, in this young, youthful kind of narcissistic reality. And it brought me into a place of helping someone who was very ill, addicted to drugs. And throughout a course of a week, me going through, they were one of my roommates in my house, and them going through a course of events of detoxing, and me just thinking, oh, it's fine, I can be around them, I'm just helping them, and I'm doing this good thing, empathizing, and not really aware of my own surroundings and my own energy. And they end up getting close to me in the middle of the night and jumping in my bed, and I'm putting them back in their bed, and I'm freaking out, going through things and detoxing on me. And I was so open and unaware of my own internal reality that I took on this thing on my skin, and all of a sudden they got healed. I'm healed. Everything's great. And I'm like, wow, great. And ended up having this thing that started taking me over and eating me alive. And I didn't sleep for a good couple months, had a nervous breakdown, went through these variations of just total decline, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And I after a course of months going through this suffering, I kept looking at, how did this happen? I was so gapped and unaware of how this happened. And then I saw, oh, this happened actually because of this person. And then I got this judgment of them, and I wasn't being truthful about that. I actually called this experience on because I just wasn't paying attention, wasn't in truth, right? And how much that hindered my way of life and reality to really be honest with myself. And it took that suffering of so much for me to awaken, that finally, after a certain period of coming out of the hospital and going through these massive cathartic events and passing out, and my body becoming very ill to a point of not being able to take in food, or rejecting water anymore, I finally just surrendered. I said, I give up. Okay, it's God's will. I'm not here to suffer. I just somehow was so over it that I just gave it all over. And I somehow connected by just saying, this is here to take my life, and I give my life to it. And it's God's will, or it's something greater than me. It was the first time I had this epiphany, like, wow, I almost felt like, oh, I'm giving my power away. It wasn't all about me and my narcissistic reality of external reality anymore. It was something like, oh, I just had to just exhaust me and put me to my deepest level of suffering to give it over. And I was ready to die that day. And I told my friend who brought me from the hospital, just take me out in the woods, I'm ready to go. And he's like, no, no, no. And I just finally felt the relief of suffering. And he brought me to this woman, and she ended up giving me these herbs, this medicine, and it helped me become alkaline again. But the thing was, is she asked me, she said, Dane, are you ready now to allow the Creator God into your life? And it was this shocking, like, whoa, like it was this, you can decide no and just pass on, or you can actually take yourself into truth that there's things bigger than you. There's something bigger than your reality, what you're perceiving about life. And I said, yes. She said, with this one, all you have to do is say yes. And I said yes, because I was on my knees. I was on a bended knee finally. And she gave me this medicine, and I took it. I went out in the woods and took it for 2 weeks. That's all I could do is drink and eat this medicine. And it brought me to the realization of like, wow, now I'm actually having a more alkaline environment. And I'm actually now learning the perception of how to really be truthful with myself. That there is something greater. And being in that honesty, right? Like there's certain teachings in ways about like truth, right? And then honesty. And we'll go through different stages of them. But in that truth, you really have to be honest with yourself. And the honesty of realizing, wow, I've just been so self-absorbed in my own reality that I needed to be pushed down this much suffering to actually pay attention that there's something bigger than me. And within recognizing something bigger than me, the greater essence of Creator, God's love, that I found salvation actually within myself. It was like being reborn through this Holy Spirit that had no religious dogma or teachings attached to it. It was just me and something greater. And that opened up a different perspective in me in my life that actually altered from that time my way of life for the last 30 years and how I've walked with when I have so much attention on myself or my own external experience that it's taking me from a greater honesty of being real about that the greater that's bigger than me is actually now a part of me. It's the individuated expression within me. That the more I acknowledge that within me rather than these external realities, I'm doing this really inspiring, exciting work that is making these internal corrections. And that's helped me be in the way of truth with myself and stay honest. And if I can continue to check in with that and find, wow, there's really things that I'm learning every day about making these corrections and adjustments, then I stay interested. And it's like my opinions and preferences and attitude totally are released from how I'm walking in this external reality, because so much of our external reality, our outer experiences of distraction from which is our life's purpose and pathway of tending to our internal experience. So that's just also been a part of what's helped keep me in my truth. And I feel truth is that key, that signpost, that guiding north that keeps me on track when things of judgment are happening or things tumultuous or sufferings, that it's always brought me back to that. There is something greater than me. And it's actually divine love when I can recognize that it's an individuated expression of something greater through me that I am and qualifying that I am. And then it's kind of acknowledging creation, God, bigger experience, but also that part that I am as well without separating myself from that quality of love and truth.
Yeah, for me, I like how you brought in honesty, because for me, integration begins with honesty.
Mm-hmm.
So people can eat some medicines, go to some ceremonies down in South America, for example, or have an experience with certain medicines that are gifted to us by the Creator, and they unlock truth and they talk to God for an hour or a day or a weekend. However, then it's like, how do I bring that truth into my life? And for me, that's where honesty is. Because now it's like, okay, let's unpack all the ways I'm not living in alignment with truth.
Mm-hmm.
Let's unpack all the ways I've been living, like you were sharing. I really appreciate your vulnerability, even calling yourself out with so much love and compassion, of like that past version of yourself that had forgotten God's truth.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, we all go through that. It's part of the agreement that we made coming into the human body and human experience, is that we would forget. And so then we have to be honest about that. And that's where the integration of these godly experiences begin, and really just unpacking our life and being okay. And then what I found too is that for someone to be honest, and this is why in spaces of facilitation and guidance, whether in groups or one-on-one, something that I always prioritize, and Dane and I prioritize in our work together, is safety and security. Creating a space that is safe and secure, whether it's in a group, one-on-one, on a Zoom call, it doesn't matter. Where that person can feel safe and secure enough to relax in and be honest. Because people tell lies to themselves and outright. Like a little kid, why does a little kid tell a lie? It's like, hey, little Johnny, did you eat the cookie in the cookie jar? And he's gonna lie because he's afraid that, he'll get punished or something bad will happen, or his parents will retract their love and say, well, we don't love you anymore, whatever, right? The child logic. And so he lies, or you're out in school and something happens and, you're afraid of being in trouble or so on and so forth. It's because there's this sense of, oh, well, like, I don't feel safe.
Yeah.
I feel like there'll be some sort of repercussion, which is interesting because when we look at a lot of like dogmas in certain religions or ways of being, there's a lot of this like punishing God, like God punishing us, which then actually separates us from truth, because then it's like, whoa, I don't want to be honest because I don't feel safe in honesty because God's going to punish me. There's this program where mom and dad will punish me. So creating a space for people to feel safe and secure is so healing in and of itself. And if we can learn to create that space for ourselves and find, where does it feel safe and secure for you? Some people, like for me, I feel really safe and secure if I take my chair and sit in the woods. Someone else might be afraid of a bear or a mountain lion or something. For me, I'm like, I feel so relaxed, like I'm just at ease here. Someone else, it might be a bathtub with candles. Someone else, it might be, driving in their car. Can actually be like put on that right music and driving and contemplating your life. That can feel really safe and secure. Someone else who's been in a car crash, they might not feel safe at all doing that, So it's all relative, and creating those sacred spaces for ourselves where then we can let go and start to be honest with ourselves. Start to be honest about how we've lived and the ways we've been separated from the Creator and the Creator's truth, and forgive ourselves. Because it's like, forgive ourselves.
Yeah.
That's a big one then. The forgiveness piece, and I loved how you brought up too, like the causal, like everything is cause and effect in some ways, of like everything that we're experiencing in this moment of our life is the cause of something, a cause of maybe a way of being, a way of maybe the food that we've intaked and put into our bodies. Or the thoughts that we've thought, or the judgments that we've held on to, or the traumas and pains that we have. And it's really, I love just like getting honest with yourself in that capacity and really finding a space where you can feel safe enough to do that, where you can relax into that, because for me in my life, man, I was so wound up and I didn't feel safe anywhere, like that was just who I was. And the first time that I started to feel safe was through meditation. I would just close my door in my room and I would just start meditating for hours, and I would just sit there and follow my breath. And I began to feel safer and safer. And it led me to an experience and a memory that I blocked out for 23 years of sexual abuse in that capacity. Just because I felt safe in that moment, I was able to see that. Then I was like, wow, this is why I am the way that I am. Okay, I started putting the pieces together around things of like, whoa, far out. I'm like, this all isn't just happening to me. This is actually the result of this thing and this thing and this thing and this thing and this thing, which all came from that one moment. Wow, far out. But it took me getting to that place of, holy smokes, I've had a dream of doing this. Wow. I just got massive deja vu.
In this moment?
Yeah, in this moment. Yeah, I've had a dream of actually sitting here with both of you right now.
Nice.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Wow.
Perfection of alignment. Yeah. Some people say deja vu is like, you're supposed to be where you're at.
Yeah. And I truly believe in that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay. You want me to riff on that for a minute?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So when we speak of original cause, one, there's two parts of our life. Each of us have our own original cause and what we're here to live in our causality. But one, as men, part of our original cause is relating and or integrating the fact that we become separate from our mother, more so than women, because women are women. They are also can become mothers. They can also create life. So we are always going to have this somewhat separate suffering or this trauma that we're separate from the mother. So in that original cause as men, one of the things I really like to relate to is our reconnection to the mother, in the essence of our belief, our awareness, returning it to the mother, giving our essence back, praying to her, giving it in a field of the downward back to the earth, which is into the root, which men are a lot of astral and spirit, crown. So the more we get embodied down to the root, giving it back to the mother, the more we actually concede and embody this essence of our original cause, right? As men. Secondly, as an original cause, your path being similar to mine, I was connected with these little girls. They were older than me when I was younger. They got into my field. There was some sexual interplay that sprung me too early. So all my life was this energy of my sexual life force running more than I was able to control. One, I had the separation of the mother anxiety. And so I was always trying to save my mother in her sufferings, her guilt, her shame, her abuse of the masculine father, whatever that was. And then also my other cause in relation to my sexual energy running too fast. So I attracted women that were wounded and that had high levels voltage of sexual energy, until I actually got into the place of centering myself and bringing awareness to my original cause, living causally. And when we have this awareness, it's just the first step. We as men, it's a great thing to look at. Wow, we're always might feel this separation from the mother because we're men. That's a wound that pretty much all men have. Yet we can be in that wound as our causality, and we're giving this connection, which we call the prime directive, to your life. When we're in causality and awareness of our causality or our original cause, we're in the response to occurrences in our life. When we're under the effect and we're not conscious or doing the work to be in healing our original cause, we're under the effect, right? So cause and effect, living causally, there's response. And we can recognize the differentiation of that. If we feel like we're in reaction a lot of life, men are in trigger, there's a lot of anger, it might be something we need to look at a little bit that's on the undercurrent of the root cause of what happened to them, where they're still angry at the mother, or there's still this not connection with the mom. So not making it about their actual blood mother, bringing it back to the earthly mother, and then also the mother within, right? Feminine nurturing, receiving the mother within us helps us balance our masculine. So the mother is nurturing, the father is providing. So how we can balance that, bringing that into our causality. So I love that you hit on that, because it's a cause of us becoming more responsible, our ability to respond, and coming into being more honest with ourselves, right? And that's a real truth of integrity that I believe is so important for us to practice in. And none of us really know how to do. We're all here just like, learning as we go. And the relatability is, I love our men's groups, the men's circles. We have such a camaraderie with men. We can relate, and there's this relatability, and we find so much accountability, responsibility, and healing within that. And there's also been a lot of talk about in the inner kind of behind the scenes circles, which Robbie and I haven't been so public with some of our teachings or what we do publicly. We're kind of more behind the scenes kind of guys. And this is something we and others kind of talk about, is facilitators that are holding space for other people with or without medicine, or trying to create this environment of facilitation that aren't really honest with themselves. And they're not really that safe to be around because they're not really being honest with themselves. And so how do we, as participants or students of this life, learn how to discern who's not being honest with themselves, but creating a safe space? And I feel like is the key, which you spoke on it too, Robbie, is like truth and honesty comes down to creating safety, and safety is first. And my reality of, if we don't have a safe, conscious environment, which means the facilitator or the practitioner or practitioners or supporters of this work of trying to create a container for people to do this focused, intentional work, aren't being honest with themselves or consistently tracking that inquiry that needs to be maintained, there isn't really that safe of a space. Right. So there's been a lot of this we've seen in the world with different types of practices, practitioners, ceremonies, medicines, especially, that have created this alternate reality, I call it, or schism or gap in people's reality of unresolved belief systems that they're interfering with or coming up against, or unclear agreement fields, which a lot of people have. And we all somewhat have this, but if we're intentionally aligning or putting this fact in our path of wanting to be in alignment with truth and being really honest with ourselves, the inquiry about living causally, I feel like, is super important. And just the foundation of intentionally presencing this can create a safer energy in the field. So it's kind of a place where people can start too.
What do you mean by start to? What do you mean by that?
Start to do deeper levels of self-inquiry or being honest with themselves, where they don't have to, I'm not pointing a finger at them or someone's not calling them out all the time. Though, if you are, it might be something to look at, And I received that feedback as well. I'm always doing my best to self-inquire, contemplate things that I've magnetized into my reality to take accountability for to a degree, and knowing now I'm not just giving my power away because everyone or everything's a mirror. But in a lot of facilitators will also reflect that back at someone like, oh, this is your stuff. You need to deal with this. And how safe is that of an environment, and you can usually feel with certain people that aren't necessarily doing the self-inquiry work. And so it's gone about through myself and a lot of other people who hold space or facilitate or just come into group councils on how becoming more honest with ourselves is creating a safer space for others, and how important that is to uphold that kind of integrity in life.
Yeah, and I feel that what it is as well on a deeper level. And yeah, first, just a side note, I feel inspired just to like acknowledge your guys' willingness to be vulnerable about some of the things that happened when you were kids around your sexuality, and like, yeah, just the importance of especially men being able to speak about that. And that safety that it creates on this call for any other man that's been through a similar experience, to know that it's safe to share about it. And especially if, sharing about it in a safe container as well.
Right.
That's really it.
Yeah.
And finding those containers, whether it's your parents, maybe not. Some parents aren't very safe to share things with. Some are like saints and amazing. Maybe it's a friend, maybe it's a counselor, whatever, like just knowing that the first step is acknowledging it and being honest about it. And then it starts opening something. And to bring it into that conversation of the facilitator or the leader that needs to, or that could benefit from deeper truth and honesty, what I've found is like holding that as a deep intention in life and the continued willingness. Because one of the things that's a trap within that world is like, oh, I'm a facilitator, so I need to be perfect. And therefore it's not safe to be honest, because if I'm honest, then I'm like, oh, look, I'm not perfect. And then, are people going to judge me? Are people going to outcast me? Or are people not going to hire me? So this is where it gets sticky if you have money involved. Not that it's bad or wrong to charge or to receive money for your service. That said, it can get sticky because now it's like, oh, I need to portray myself in a certain way because my safety and security relies on this image or this success of my food, house, whatever. And that's where it's good, like as facilitators, to not jump into like making it a career path and to start as the path of service and have another source of income and then slowly, transition into that as you can build integrity and, have those side incomes. So all that being said, I feel it's the willingness to be honest, the willingness to face truth, the willingness to be responsible and accountable. That's the most important quality, because that willingness is integrity. I feel like integrity is not being perfect all the time. Integrity is the willingness to continue to show up to the meditation pillow, show up to the men's or women's circle, show up to the healing sessions, or show up to reaching out for help, or showing up to someone calling you out, and being willing to face yourself and also be discerning, like Dane was saying, of like, is this projection? Is this mine? What percentage is projection? What percentage is mine? And how can I sift through that and own the percentage that's mine? Because sometimes someone might be projecting on you, but they might be projecting and highlighting something very real in you. That's not to say the projection is justified, because projection is usually based in judgment and it's not the most healing energy. That said, you might be like, whoa, this person's projecting because I have a huge shadow that I need to own. Or maybe it's like, whoa, I have like, some stuff to own here, but I'm actually like a really amazing person and holding truth to the best of my ability and, living in the best way I can. And they're projecting a lot onto me, because sometimes when we hold light, it can shine into places within someone that is uncomfortable. And so that discernment is really important. And it can be hard to do alone. And that's where it's like bringing it to counsel, bringing it to friends, people that you can trust, not just trust to be there for you, but trust to like be truthful with you.
Not who can really see it with you.
And be like, there's something to look at there, dude. Or no, they're projecting on you. Like, you probably have some stuff to look at, but like, I wouldn't take it too seriously.
Or is it just my resistance to seeing it? Or that's a defined aspect too. Like, how do we really know what is our intuition, what's correct, right?
Having those people that can help us qualify it.
And doing the self-inquiry, like you're saying, the more consistently we're willing to show up to it. And that was something that came up for me. I never wanted to be a facilitator. I never wanted to be a counselor or supporter, but I had enough experience of showing up for myself to where people started showing up to me, and it felt easy and relevant. But I realized that was my resistance to wanting to be a facilitator. Never wanted that, but I had to be responsible to showing up to that resistant aspect because I had enough that people felt resonant in response to be helpful to them. But it also took me years of knowing the difference what's mine and what's not to actually contain my energy to say, or know what my true intuition is saying or what's saying. And that's still something we like show up to every day, right? The difference of what's mine and what's not. And I think that's a really huge topic for a lot of people coming into their own evolution of life or practices or wanting to learn more or coming into these, enticing ways of life that might be through different cultures or different types of circles. And so much of that interplays with, I feel like, being honest with ourselves and containment practices, knowing ourselves enough to know we can come into a field and feel what's ours and what's not, and then not be in a field of judgment, to where we're not maybe blending so much, but we can know what's ours and what's not enough to go, okay, we can come away from this field of energy of people, whether if it's in medicine or just communing. Medicine's another story too, because of the energetics of what certain medicines will do to your energetic and subtle bodies. The energetic field, it blows you open to a degree. And if you don't know what's yours and what's not, there can be this blending that's been happening that we haven't really brought much to topic publicly. This is kind of the first subtle little vulnerable seed we're dropping in. But it's a really important thing. And I think it's going to be a big topic here as the years come on, to unawareness of your own energetic body, or we call it psychic space. What's going on in your thoughts, feelings, and emotion that relates to agreement fields and belief systems. Where your agreement field's at with yourself, with God, or other people, and your belief systems about yourself with God and other people can create a whole other interplay of entangled or enmeshed energy, right? And so I've found some really great teachings through sitting and holding space with and for other people in the contemplation of this aspect, as how do I integrate from this experience where there was all this happening and I don't know what's going on now, or I don't know what's mine and what's not, and I'm more confused than when I went in, right? This is I feel like a really important thing for us to bring awareness to. And I think what I feel it has to do with, through my years of practice and my learning daily, is containment of learning what's ours and what's not. And I feel like that's also on the topic of how honest we need to be with ourselves in maintaining a consistent inquiry and practice within ourselves to know more about what's ours and what's not, to when we get into fields or even the supermarket, or we're at the mall, or we're, driving into some place where there's a large amount of people. There seems to be so many unclear agreement fields and unresolved belief systems that there's this overlay and crossover into the energetic subtle fields and the psychic field that can create somewhat, I don't want to say distortion, but a bit of a overlay of blending of energies that, for people that are really not aware of their field, like me, I was not at all for many years. I would take things on or end up with these emotions, thoughts, or feelings because my energy was so blown out and I was so in love consciousness, or super excited all the time. Or when I wasn't excited, I was like really in this trigger or charge. So I wasn't holding an emotional energy of poise and balance where my field could be contained. And so I was letting energy in and I was leaking energy very consistently and constantly. And so I started seeing this with all these images that I have in my head or thoughts. Sometimes you go into somewhere where there's a lot of crowded people and you lay down at the end of the evening or day and you're going to sleep and you're like, why am I having all these thoughts and images like coming in, or these sounds? Or oftentimes it can be because maybe you weren't as contained as you were, or just present to where you were at that day. Maybe you had a fight with your mom or your partner and your energy started blowing out. And being in other fields of unclear agreements or unresolved belief systems, we can then have this blending as humans naturally do. So not to say that it's wrong, but there's a lot of teachings that I feel come into how we integrate. And for me, that was a big part of where my path of journey of adventure or learning or evolving came into, because I was not conscious at all. But like the experience that I shared earlier, it brought me into this. I'm really interested in knowing more about how I can be more present to something greater than me. And it brought me on this path with other indigenous and ceremonies and a way of life that kept me interested and inspired to learn more about self-inquiry and who I'm becoming, right? So yeah, a lot of pieces in there to play off of, and I know, but it feels very important in the way of us in our growth and learning and evolution to set into motion this presence and awareness of ourself and others.
I think it's the most important. I think it's something that I'm just beginning to learn, actually. Like, I think I'm just beginning to be on the cusp of learning that, of like how far out I actually have been and what that's like to bring it back in. Because I can be super excitable in that capacity of things where I just like, I go, man. And like, honestly, I can go and keep going. And it feels really good because I'm in the flow of things. But at the same time, it's just like, I've kind of like, I guess, struggled with it in some ways because I feel like I've pushed it away of like, oh, I don't want to go there. And then there's this part of me that over the last like month has said, okay, let's just completely let go into that. And I think through that letting go, what I've like walked away with and what I've kind of like even came out of that weekend with, was just how much there was scattered up here. And it's like, just bring it back. Like, bring it back to here, Ethan. Like, be here in that specific way of like, I would just let my energy flow over here. It felt like then it'd flow over here. Then I'd be in the grocery store and it'd be like, whoa, like, wow, you know? And there's a part of me that was almost addicted to that high. Like, I was addicted to like that spaciousness that I could feel and that awareness that I could feel. And just like, holy smokes, this is like, it felt like it was like God just pouring through every ounce of my body. And it was like, well, I didn't know where my body was at times, you know? And it's just like really bringing it back to like, okay, to noticing like, who is the person who's excited? Like, where am I right now? Oh, wow, I'm up in excitement, or I'm up in joy. I'm up way up high, you know? And there was no awareness around that before. And now there's starting to be an awareness of like, oh, there you go.
Yeah, and even sometimes just having that awareness of it and presencing it can be enough for certain people. Like yourself, you have this amazing energy, beautiful body, and you're big and you have this field. And it comes from a very pure place, which I see and feel with you. And so in that being said, I think it varies when I'm learning between certain people, but I feel that with you. You have such an expanse, but you have a presencing of that you are very expanded at this time, right? And I feel like that plays into account of you being connected with your energy body or who you are. Yeah. You can see that you walk with that. It feels that way in your field and you're around you, being around you.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that piece. Cause like there can sometimes be like a discombobulation up there where it's like, it's almost, I'm judging myself for that experience. And that's where it is, you know, it's just like, oh, because, and I think it comes back to like, as well, like the piece around also like owning who you are, you know, like really owning the gifts that you're here to give and what you're here to give and what you're here to share, not from a place of like, hey, look at me, I'm a facilitator, I'm a healer, I'm a coach, or whatever words that we want to put there in that title. But it comes back to like a part of me that's scared of that, you know, like I'm a little bit scared of like being seen and really owning what that is in here. And it's like, oh, that's just because I'm afraid, man. I'm afraid that somebody's going to be like, hey, look at you. What are you doing? You know, you're not right. Or like, just like in shaming, like how I was shamed when I was a kid or when I experienced bullying or all the past experiences that I have that taint that kind of space. And so it's cool to like, it's really beautiful to hear that for me because it's just like, it sees the judgment and it's just like, oh, okay.
Yeah. And that fear can come from the place of also not feeling safe, right?
Yeah.
So as you do the self-inquiry, might be something of that turning the tide into, and even you said, oh, maybe it started from a little kid, maybe it's the same. So maybe we can't have that now to have that healing with their mother or father on the phone or in person, but can you be that father and mother for yourself to help him feel safe? Can you create that space for yourself? And what would that look like for you? I'm curious.
Oh, see, that's what it is, you know? It all comes like it does. I just love it. Like it feels full circle in the way of like it really comes back to creating that safety in yourself, you know? Because when you have that safe in yourself and you really give yourself double in that capacity, really take care of yourself, it's like then the natural outpouring is just that, you know? Like it's not even like you have to do or have to try. It just becomes like, it's just like, it's like you're drinking water, but it's coming the other way. You know, it's just coming out of you in a really beautiful way with no restriction. And I think for me, man, like it's a lot of like the same story of like, I spent a lot of time just giving and giving and giving and giving and giving and giving and giving. And I'm just starting to see the ways that I was doing that. And it's like, well, what about me? And like even the work that I do. So I work for a man and I have no structure around it in some ways. Like it doesn't matter how many hours like a week I work, doesn't matter how many hours a day I work. It's really up to me. And it's really nice and it's really wonderful. And at the same time, what I've noticed is myself prioritizing that over taking care of myself. Like it's the first thing that I walk into, you know, or I've noticed myself like overworking in a capacity because I'm scared that, oh, if I don't work today, then I'm going to get let go or something's going to be there. And so I feel like I really see just more of a reclamation of like, oh, how can I put myself first? You know, and I think that how I can do that and really step into that more is just bringing a level of softness to my experience. And like, it sounds silly, but like feeding myself,
Yeah.
you know, like making sure that I'm eating,
Mm-hmm.
like eating when I'm really being like called to eat in that particular way, and drinking good water. And a big thing I took away from the weekend as well was just like appreciating the water and having that moment of just prayer for like what I'm putting into my body and really slowing down and creating pockets, because I'm a co-parent of my son. And so I only have him 50-50. And when I'm with him, it's hard to create those pockets, but really like dedicating time to creating that pocket for me of like, okay, Wednesday, I'm not going to work. I'm just going to go spend it in nature and going for a walk. So it's like, I really see also too, these just like thousands of stories that like, oh, well, if I do that, then I'm not going to get as much done. And so it's going to come back to almost this fear of being fired or this fear of being let go or this fear of something's going to happen. Or if I don't take care of myself, then I'm selfish because maybe my son needs it now. And so there's all these stories that I feel like I'm becoming aware of. And it's just like really starting to see it like, oh, but you matter too.
And I'm curious what that would look like for you to not only nurture yourself that way, but first. How does that feel to say, I'm going to prioritize myself first before my boss or before my son? How does that feel to you?
A little
Right.
bit edgy.
Right. So this is like unpacking. This is digging in, and this is climbing the ladder to the sense of where your higher self is, these higher levels of self-nurturing. So you can truly be there for your boss. So you can truly, in your job, so you can truly be there for your son. Yeah. So I'm really curious on what that would look like, what that would feel like in your inquiry to find out about putting yourself first. Because as far as I know you too, and we've sat in council ceremony and we had these prayers and working with alchemy and learning about how we can alchemize this. If we put ourselves first, what does that bring up? And would that be a signpost to a deeper connection of self-inquiry so we can actually be the employee at its fullest, be the father at your fullest?
I think like at the end of the day, like what it comes back to for me is almost like this fear of just like being abandoned. You know, like if I really put myself first and I really care for myself, then no one's going to be there for me.
So safety, feeling secure and supported. But you spoke fear into it. So that step into what if fear is your power just trying to return to you, but it's in a field of judgment. And the safety and security is someone that didn't show up for you that you want. Is there an option for you to show up for yourself? Spaciousness, right? Calm passion, that little boy he needs. Yeah. What would that feel like to you?
Well, I can feel it in my chest, you know, like just the warm, slow tingles and just like, oh, like almost like a breath of fresh air and a sigh of really like a.
Sometimes when we get that space, it almost feels like a calming, nurturing, like almost a feminine coming in, but we're providing presence for ourselves. So does that feel like the masculine, feminine mother, father coming in to support you in that?
What do you mean by that?
Well, in certain aspects, you're providing spaciousness for yourself, providing awareness to feel, but you're feeling in that feeling like your heart, or you're feeling nurtured maybe by it. So the provider is the father and the nurturer is the mother. So you can take we can take these aspects as, oh, there's my mother and father showing up for me. And can we apply that to it showing up for him when you were younger, that you felt like there was this abandonment, but here it is, these aspects you were showing up for you right before us, right in front of us in this moment. And how does that feel? Is that an application you might be interested in utilizing or exploring? What deeper levels or anything else coming up for you around that?
Oh yeah. Yeah. It makes me think of like, in some ways, like my mother's on my left and my father's on my right. And it feels like both of them are here with me. And in a really beautiful way, providing that energy, what I'm feeling right now, which is going to like that little boy in me that didn't experience that often. And it feels very healing, like in that way. And just very like, I don't know how to. So yeah, I'm trying to describe the sensation. It just feels really just like softening. Like it feels like I'm like melting in a particular way and just softening in that space of my body, which is just the chest. It feels like that part is just like,
Hmm. Can you feel that place too, that you're showing up for yourself right now?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you give yourself acknowledgement for that, celebrate that.
Mm-hmm.
The simple ways of nurturing ourselves. You're taking time with it. You're being present to it. You're actually becoming accountable to your life. How can we as men or adults show up to children or other people if we aren't integrated with this innocent part of ourselves that still feels lacking or scared, right? You're doing it right now in a very mature, responsible, vulnerable, tangible way. I can feel it in your field, speaking to it. So that's part of us giving ourselves acknowledgement and credit. No one else is doing this but you, your God self within you. Giving yourself, wow, celebrating that, nurturing and providing, balancing. They call that in the ancient texts, the sacred masculine, showing up for yourself, showing up for that nurturing to balance. And that's the essence of the mother coming through you so you can be the father. I'm curious if anything else comes up for you around that or these levels of which you're inquiring.
I think there's just like the piece around my son, you know, of like how great of a gift that is that I get to give that to him, you know, of like that's really, it's like in some ways, it's like tending to that little boy in me. And it's hard to sometimes, like, it's hard to see the separation between that little boy and my little boy, you know, like my son in that capacity of like, it feels like I'm walking that same path with him. And it just like, I just felt like really kind of like, I guess like just the vision of just like holding him in a new way, in a softer way, in just like a way of like, hey, like, I see you. I'm here for you. And like, that feels really good because that's all that I've wanted to give him. You know, it's like that. It's all that I've wanted to give him. I've just wanted to be that space for him where he feels those, like
Your-
he feels
your
that,
son.
he feels safe. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yeah. And so-
You as the son.
yeah,
Yeah. Giving yourself that too.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes,
Through him.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So it feels really good.
Mm-hmm. It's a good father. You're a good father. And that's beautiful work. That's really important that a lot of I see and feel parents aren't really aware of, doing that inner child work for themselves. And the children feel it. This work you're just doing today, and that you qualify that feeling into your body. You give it gratitude even. You feed that. You alchemize that into your field and of knowing, and how you're feeling when you're driving home or you're going to see him. You remember this moment. You imprint it, that nurturing feminine, that providing father, and you're doing that for yourself and seeing how you want to be held, and you hold yourself that way. Your son will feel that in his field. And oftentimes children need less of our energy and attention when we're doing that for ourselves. But they get more from us just nurturing ourselves than we could ever try and give to them externally. It's beautiful, brother.
Yeah, I think it's really just hammering home that piece, you know, of like really just taking care of myself, like really, really honoring that, and really, because there's almost like the thought too that just like goes quick to like, oh, on to the next thing. But it's like, hey, stop and celebrate that. Have gratitude for that, you know? Have a celebration of that, really imprint that, really own that, really be with that.
Mm-hmm. And the more present you are with that process, because it's never ending.
Yeah.
The more present you are with that process, the more honest you're being with yourself.
Yeah.
And through that honesty, that God's truth, the safer your son's going to feel. The safer any children are going to feel around you. And as this we call the sacred masculine teaching, the safer women are going to feel around you. The more chance of spaciousness and calm, passion, and love we have for ourselves, the more chances we're putting into this possibility of magnetizing a woman of our alignment, where we really truly feel met by God through that source of that safety, through our beloved. And that's really taking accountability for our lives. It's being responsible to our ability to respond, and through our causality, right? Awareness even of our living causally gives us that prime directive, prime being our centrifuge, our center point, directing us, guiding us through that north. Celebrating it. and being recognized that you deserve it, actually. You're worthy of it. And as a man, we need you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're important.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not over anybody or anything else. But it couldn't be done without you, this evolution of humanity. Because this work we're doing right here is actually helping humanity and all men in this world too. It's the micro to the macro. It's how it happens. It gives more spaciousness, grace for us in our own lives so we can actually have a longer and further distance effect and impact in our love and our praying for this world, praying for humanity, because we're praying for ourselves. We can't necessarily do much for others if we don't do for ourselves, or we can expend all of our energy and give it all away. And it might seem or feel good to all these other people or the way we're doing something or building a home or going to work. But if we're really not giving to ourselves, what it's actually doing is it's like half-assing it on an integrity level. And it might be beautiful. We might be the best at our job or what we do externally in our external reality for, with, or other people. But when we come home and we're trying to be present with ourselves, we're empty, or we can be very leaked out and go, oh, now I just need time for myself. And I'm exhausted. How do I cultivate it, bring it back? Oh, oftentimes people don't have the time, presence, energy, and attention to actually do a practice to focus them. So they're so empty that it's like TV or a movie or do something to turn this energy, let it exhaust more so I can actually feel myself, right? And it takes that cultivation and recognition that the work you're doing has value and that you're taking yourself as priority. And it's actually not narcissistic. You're not a power tripper. You're not a control freak. You're not a manipulator, but there's somewhere a belief system that could be similar. Like, oh, I can't give myself this much credit because my whatever might be looked at or run away with the power. But it's not truly who we are. So it's like that. We put ourselves up against that edge of like maybe suffering or resistance, right? Finding our truth and our honesty within it.
Which is actually the next teaching after truth and honesty, which we just went through real time, rather than talking about it, experiencing it, which once we find truth and we move into honesty, now we're ready to unpack deeper, which is courage. And courage in the way that I speak of it in this context is self-reflective. It's looking inward and being willing to see our fears. And so often those who are the most fearful actually have a lot of courage, because every day they're facing their fears, just sometimes to get up out of bed or go to the grocery store or go to work. It's like a scary thing. There's a lot of courage there. However, it's more inward. And so the ability to look at that and then what are you going to do about that now, right? How can you now take action on that now that you have that clarity? You've been honest and truthful about these fears, and how can you take action on it? That's what we're talking about too. However, that's when push comes to shove, so to speak, for lack of a better term. It's not about happening in this moment, although you are expressing aspects of it. It's what happens tomorrow, the next day, the next week, the next month, which is the teaching of bravery, that there's courage and bravery, that these are different teachings. Just like when you say in a general sense, oh, truth and honesty, and people might say, oh, isn't that kind of the same thing? It's like, well, we just talked about it, very different. Courage and bravery, isn't that the same thing? No, it's very different. Because bravery is now like, okay, how can you show up for that inner child in your son? And how can you also forgive your mom and forgive your dad for the ways that they may have not shown up in the ways that you needed? And how can you provide love for them, whether they're still here on the planet or not, whether they're willing to meet you in it or not? Because most parents are doing the best they can, and sometimes there's a lot of woundedness there, and the best doesn't feel very good to us. I won't say us, because I feel like so grateful for my parents who were, I just love them so much. And yeah, there was wounds as well where like, oh, I wish this was different. And I was just sharing with Dane, I wish my dad would have like taken me to work more and taught me how to like pound nails into a board, because he was a carpenter and a tradesman. It's like, oh, well, there's a way that he didn't show up the way that maybe I would have needed. Instead, I was playing video games, which didn't really serve me on my path. Oh, I wish Dad would have taken that time with me so I could have built a skill. Okay, well, let's forgive him for that. Let's just see that he didn't know how to show up in that way because his dad didn't teach him. and he showed up in amazing other ways. So bravery is then, okay, let's make it right. Let's take action. If we're afraid of something, let's do it. You know what I mean? Like if you're afraid of, if you have social anxiety, you can sit all day and sit with it, contemplate it, be with it, love it. And the best way to clear it or integrate it is just go be social. You know,
take action.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
bravery is like courage in action.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So it's this evolution of the teachings. These are actually the teachings that I walk with in my life and teach others. The first is truth, the second is honesty, the third is courage, the fourth is bravery. And there's 7 actually. And so one of the things in bravery is about making amends with people. Because what happens is we have a conflict with someone, and often when we are stuck in a sense of powerlessness and victim, which basically all our inner children are suffering from that to some degree, especially with mom and dad, because the one time of any time in someone's life, every single human being, our childhood is a time of where we're going to be victims because we are sort of powerless. Like if mom and dad say, oh, little Jimmy's annoying, we're just going to leave him out in nature. Like little Jimmy's not going to live, like he's going to die. Whereas as an adult, it's like, oh, well, I know how to, I don't know how to survive in nature, so I'd probably die too. But you know what I mean? Like it's more of the analogy. It's like when we're kids, we need our parents up until a certain age. Without them, we will not survive, especially a baby. So there is always that powerlessness, that victim energy. And on the flip side, our parents, funny enough, are also powerless to their kids to a degree. It's like baby's crying, got to do something about it. You want to sleep? Too bad, like, so there's a powerlessness on both sides, which is kind of funny how that is and how that often is. And the victim is, both sides are actually experiencing powerlessness. All that being said, when we are stuck in that dynamic, because the victim has felt powerless generally to some external power or source, whatever it might be, a person, situation, where's the accountability? Where's the responsibility? It's not my fault. I'm powerless to this. I'm a victim. I didn't do anything to deserve this. So there's an inability to be accountable and responsible. And it's not to say that we need to be accountable and responsible saying, oh, I created this or manifested that. No, it's just being accountable and responsible for our experience of it. And in any way we may have co-created it. Some situations in life are very much, you didn't manifest that. Like war comes to your country, like you didn't manifest that. That's just something that happened that, world economic things happening. Like we didn't manifest that. That just happened. And what we want to be accountable and responsible for is not the event, but our reaction to it or our response to it or how we may navigate it and how to integrate the wound of it, right? So no matter what happens to us, we get to choose how that event affected us. So as what you shared is what happened to you as a boy, for example. It's like you get to choose if that's going to make you a bitter person that is always stuck in that story, or whether you're going to take that story and say, yeah, that was a shitty thing. I didn't call that in. I didn't manifest that. That was something that I was powerless to, that someone took advantage of me, that was, not okay. And how am I going to turn that into medicine? How am I going to make amends with that person? Not to say anything other than I want to make amends. I want to reclaim my power and my energy and reclaim myself from that experience and forgive you and give you back all your stuff and say, we're done. See you later. You don't have to do it with them. We're done. See you later. Like our energies are now like this. Because what happens when we're in situations that we need to make amends for, it's not about blame. It's not about who's right or wrong. It's about reclaiming our energy, because when we are in that conflict and issues with someone, we get tangled up and we get intertwined with their energy and we lose parts of ourselves and we contribute to it as well. So for example, if you have had something happen to you and then your whole life you're angry at that person and bitter to them, you're then feeding that problem. You're feeding that issue. So you are contributing to a certain degree and you're giving all that energy away to that person or the past event. And, we want to reclaim that energy and return their energy and separate. So making amends is a skill and it takes a lot of humility, because a lot of people are prideful. They'll say, well, that wasn't my fault. Why would I make amends? They should make amends. It's not about that. It's not about blame. It's about clearing our energy field and letting go of that karma and putting it down. Saying, I'm not going to carry this anymore. That was something that I was sitting with recently, actually. I was thinking about this to share. Is I was sitting and meditating by the river and praying and, in my own way, talking to the creator. And I was feeling these things in my life that had been happening, things that at times I feel powerless to, living situations, relationships ending, certain perspectives people may have about me. I was sitting with that, and creator was like, you're carrying a lot. And I felt that deep compassion. Oh yeah, thank you for seeing that. And then in that moment, I was like, oh, I see what the creator's showing me. I'm carrying a lot. I'm carrying it. I'm choosing to carry it. And in that moment, the creator was giving me a choice. You can keep carrying it or you can put it down. And I was like, oh, it's a pretty good choice. I think I'll put it down, So sometimes we feel like these burdens are happening to us in life. We get to choose if we carry them or not. And part of amends is saying, I've carried this long enough. I'm going to put it down. And so there's a ceremony for that, a ritual that you can do, and you get a gift, and you get some tobacco or some sort of sacred medicine, and you can make the gift, and you go up to that person and you put it down at their feet. You say, I'm here to make amends, and what happened between us is over, reclaiming my energy and giving you back yours, and it's done. May it be blessed. You can have more of a conversation if you want, but it's not necessary. And if they pick the gift up, then they also put it down. They say, okay, I agree. And if they don't pick it up, then they continue to carry it. And they tend to carry it for both of you because now you've let it go. So they're the only ones carrying it. It's twice the weight kind of thing. So it's good to tell them that first, so they know what they... And what I found is that you have to, sometimes you can't do that. So maybe someone's not here anymore. Maybe that person you don't know where they live, or maybe it's not appropriate. Maybe approaching them would cause harm because you want to make it in a good way. So I've found that you can do that with the creator, with your own soul, with the soul of that person by just doing that same ritual, maybe buying them something that's organic so you can leave it in nature somewhere. Say, creator, I want to make amends with this person. They're not here in my life anymore, but I want to make amends. So I'm here to do that with you, with my own heart and with their spirit. I wish them well. I wish them the best. Leave this gift and then put it down. Move on with your life. So that takes a lot of bravery. And it's something that when we come to honesty, we come to truth, and we come to courage, we start to see oh, wow, there's maybe a trail of destruction behind me or a trail of drama. All these conflicts I've had because of those ways I wasn't in truth with the creator. And that's why the bravery and the amends is an important step, because it's what helps us clean up the past and make it right again. And it's good to do that ceremony with yourself as well. Buy yourself a gift. Take yourself out for dinner. Go to the spa, do something nice, Say, man, I've been really hard on myself. Let's make amends. I've really been judging myself. Let's make amends. And that's a great source of self-love. So yeah, it's the action. So how can you make amends? How can you forgive your parents? And that's the next step of that healing.
Yeah, I just also really want to thank you for your presence and your action taking into nurturing that part of yourself, presencing that part of yourself that felt fear or that was to be abandoned, and the bravery and action to do that here in this moment with us, and the humility that you carry and walk with, right? And that's creating action for your son and his life, and how important that is. It can be a big thing to look at that feeling of abandonment and the part of ourselves that we're disconnected or felt disconnected from our parents, to step into that in a council in front of others that might be viewing, and to really give yourself acknowledgement and spaciousness for that. As you've seen, even just giving yourself a gift, gifting yourself that. And I just want to acknowledge you and honor you for that presence in this moment of what you'd work through, in the connection that your son is going to feel. And knowing that work you're doing and giving yourself that kind of love, and you're doing it not only for yourself first, but also for him, is really important as a man in a masculine life, to have that kind of presence, that bravery, that's courage in action, right? And that humility, and walking with that humility of essence of like, wow, it's something so much bigger than me, but I'm a part of that bigness, and I can actually acknowledge and walk with that strength to make that action forward, that integrity, that responsibility, that accountability for my life and the life I've created. I can't emphasize enough the importance of that, and how it inspires me. I don't know what that's like to have a child. I don't have children, and have gone through that birthing experience and being a man and caretaking, providing for that, and how much that can be. And I commend all the men, fathers out there, for that effort and what it takes on a daily just to maintain that frame of mind of another life that you're caring for, aside from our own life, and how much we really cared for our own life, and how much more we need to care for our own life, and bringing that to council here. It's really important, and just knowing you're supported with that. And that'll go with me in my thoughts and my prayers for you, and taking responsibility in this action as I felt, and you're recognizing those feelings here at this time in a council for the future generation, the children, and as a really great example of a human that you are, a really great example of a man that you are, and that as a reminder again that you deserve to give yourself that recognition. You deserve to be recognized by others as well. And it's not even because of your great behavior or what a good dad you are, the things you've done.
Yeah.
It's just because of who you are, the authentic, unique sincerity of your soul essence, your commitment to you, and the impact that has upon the world, and how it's actually touching this whole world, all of humanity. I believe this work it's traveling through us out to all of humanity right now, and especially men, fathers that might hear this and go, whoa, I can really do that for myself? Whoa. Yeah, you guys can. Like, you deserve to. Really, the men and fathers, they deserve to be recognized and stepping up, and that, as well as mothers, and giving themselves that. And I was actually in a place of really in a huge forgiveness of my father recently, and going, wow, I was so upset at him my whole life, but he left right when I was 7, when I knew he was coming out of the wing of the mother, right into the father, these rites of passage moments, that he just abandoned me. And I had this victim my whole life. And it turned out in my later 30s and early 40s coming into being my gift of going, he honored himself so much that he left me, my brother, my family, all of it, that he wouldn't compromise himself so much. Wow. And how much anger and judgment and pain I went through my, youth and teenage years around that, and feeling like I was so scared because I was so abandoned, and how much effort it took for me to find myself within that. And how much I wanted to become a father, this prayer that I have for my life, at my age or whatever, wherever I'm at, whatever stage. And I still believe it. I still believe it. I have the faith. And that it feels like this relevant with this vision or prayer that I still have to become a father. The closer I come is relevant to the work that I feel like I'm doing with my inner child, to my younger self, and with my father, my blood father. And appreciating him. Wow. If 20 years ago, to hear myself say this now, never would have believed it. Just appreciating him for him, just leaving everything, that it was so important he wouldn't compromise that truth that was right for him, as hard as it was, or how much judgment anybody else had toward him, that I'm so grateful for him, and I love him today for it, because it's given me the discernment and the truth in my intuition to not compromise myself over anybody, even my own child, even as how much judgment or pain or he might have taken from his parents or other people in the world. That's a true guidance. I've learned and witnessed true masters in this world, and teachers, I call them masters. Like, no matter what their tribe tells them or their society tells them or their boss tells them, it's like, nope, I know this guidance is a higher purpose, and my causality is with my creator. that for me gives my purpose and path the truth of my divine birthright. It's like, this is between me and God, no matter whatever anybody else human says or does, my own son or my own parents. I feel that's so willful. And for me, that's like getting into the feminine. That's giving it back to the mother. Give it all back to you, mother. As a man, I'm always saying that. Oh, I'm really having this challenge of judgment today. I feel really bad. I just give it back to the mother. People are like, whoa, you can do that? Yeah, but she composts it. She turns it into nurturing, and I feel so much better. And it's not putting anger at her. It's just actually giving it back to where the power came from. So as a man, I really practice that. And for my father, I always had that thought for him, like, way to go, way to do that, way to just trust that guidance so much that you wouldn't compromise. And that it gave me this instilled moral and value to really have that alignment with my intuition and my guidance, so I could actually be set up to be the best father that I can be if and when, or if, however it goes, that I can be the best in commitment to my own path and destiny of my life's purpose and path here, what it means for me to unravel these unknowns and stay curious, whatever it is that can keep me interested in a good way, that I can stay in alignment or learn more about what it is to be in alignment with my own creator. And oftentimes it's just really giving myself credit and seeing other men that are inspirations and committed to that path of selflessness. But we have to actually admit sometimes that we're selfish. We actually do a lot of things to get, and that's okay. Because if we don't get certain levels, what are we really giving? So that is you as a father, to honor yourself in that way of your truth, aside from your son or your parents, that we can, in that pathway of walking, that humility, grace ourselves with, that we can be that example for our sons or our parents and our community in a way that's truly integral, walking without compromise to our truth with our creator or something bigger than ourselves, or the God within us, right? So thank you.
Yeah. I receive that, like, fully. Thank you. And also, like, thank you guys for being this safe space to support that, like, I obviously felt safe enough to go there because of the space that you guys also hold within you guys too. It's like you guys hold that space, and I feel that deeply from the both of you, like, really, really deeply. And two, I just want to honor you, man, for like the courage and bravery that takes to look at that story around your father and to be with those emotions and to be with those feelings of anger and just like frustration towards him, and to see something different, to be able to be willing and open to see something different, to see a new way of seeing. And what a gift it sounds like for you. And I just celebrate you in the acknowledgement and the seeing of that gift, man. Like that's hard to do, man, can be hard to do. It can be hard to do, right? Like to be with that, to experience that and have all of that emotion and have to go through the experience that you had to walk through because of that decision from your father. But then to go back and be like, wow, like he really trusted himself. He really put himself first, so much so that he's able to walk away from all of this. And for you to be able to have enough space and bravery and courage to separate yourself from that pain, to see something different, man. It's just like,
thank you.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like, wow.
And if I may briefly, it was actually, I didn't go too much into, and I won't as well, but it was because I allowed myself to feel all the pain. And I was actually present with all the pain so much that I honored his truth was that important, and that it gave me the strength of my own truth when I was actually able to forgive him by feeling all that I felt that it brought up for me, that somehow through suffering has been that continued domino effect. Suffered enough to where I can go, oh yeah, and like that pain I still feel is the gift, if I can translate it and flip it on its head and acknowledge it out of the field of judgment. If I can take that anger and pain and suffering, and I know it's my power trying to return to me, if I can take it out of the field of judgment, and it's actually just energy, and it's, wow, it's my power coming back to me because I've actually taken out of a field of judgment. I'm in a field of feeling it and actually accepting it and acknowledging it. And this is a practice I do, is just I acknowledge it into my conscious mind, because so many of our emotions are in the subconscious, unconscious, running our reality. But if there's some very practical, applicable lessons, if we get those feelings into a conscious awareness of our mind, bring them into the conscious mind, and acknowledge them, and then they're actually integrating, then it becomes our power with that, as well as like angry. I had so much anger when I was younger, and he left, and I didn't understand it. So I was creating all these events to create these lessons, right? But when I started understanding psychology and somatic therapies, presence of being, authentic relating, marriage counseling through my marriages, and all these different experiences of suffering, so you can learn something, so you can help people if you choose that, I kind of took it as that, there's a way of the conscious mind learns by repetition, or some would say, or some teachers, mastery, or say rampaging it. And the consistency of authenticating that emotion mentally enough that it's real is actually allowing our conscious mind to open to it, so our conscious body can actually integrate it. So it works for some people. There's some practical techniques in that way of, I feel angry, I feel angry, I feel angry, I feel angry. Ooh, I feel angry. Well, if I look at someone doing that, I'd say, man, they're being pretty responsible with that anger right there. And it might take them a while. I've sat for hours. I feel angry. I feel angry. When's this going to end? Oh my God. Trying to make it end. Okay. Just feel it. I feel angry. Going through these times. But after a while, I would notice this thing happened. My conscious mind was like, damn, whoa, I feel angry. I feel angry. Actually, I don't feel angry, but I'm saying I feel angry. Whoa, now I can feel it in my body. Ooh, there's that anger. Oh, I can feel it in my liver, this part, my body. Your body is a perfect response system where emotions are stagnant, right? And if we tune into our body internally, it's the signpost, it's the guidance system home to actually embody that power. And so I started doing these practices year after year with anger, fear, all these majors. And I was in multiple different men's groups, men's associations, and I'd noticed, certain men can work things out in certain ways, and that's fine. Everyone has their own way, no judgment. Yet, as a dietary nutritionist, cleansing therapist, all these different types of things, all these different health issues. So everything that I worked with and got help with, I actually started learning in these pieces. And I learned about, the most addictive substance for the human body is. Do you know what it is? It was the thing I was the most hooked on in my younger years. I was a junkie for it. And everything I did was based around this substance, adrenaline. It's the most addictive, and it's the most toxic for the body. And it toxifies the liver more than anything. So there's a certain ways I've found, like accountability and responsible ways of moving fear or anger is not getting the big cortisol adrenaline rush. Yeah, maybe once or twice in your life can be good to dump it or move the energy. But what happens is a lot of men don't realize, or people, they're getting a huge adrenaline rush and it's toxifying part of their liver. And once they get the rush, it feels like this release through cortisol. And every time they do it, it's creating more addiction and actually more toxicity in the body. So it didn't seem very responsible to me. I had a very challenging health issue with my liver at one point, and they weren't sure if I was going to live. And I started working with these medicines, which also was another wake up. Your filter is toxic. So what I was seeing and feeling and thinking through wasn't actually clear. No matter how honest I was or how on bended knee I was praying to God, please help me, there was still physical toxins in the liver. Also, the liver is an interesting organ because it's the most imprintable organ in the human body. And it's where all of our ancestral karma gets passed down and imprints into our body. So through this study, in different forms, in my practice with clients and initiations of ceremony, there's 90% of what we're carrying is actually not ours. Energetically, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and all these different levels and layers related to lack of an ability to process emotion through our ancestors. So it all gets stored up in our bringing consciousness to a level. So if we're raising our consciousness, our organs are going to also be wanting to raise. But if there's blockages in there, there's a teaching of, here's a pathway to learn from. Here's part of your lesson plan. And so I've found myself as when I would use these big rushes of adrenaline and anger, pushing anger out, I would feel these rushes, but I could also really feel it in my liver. My body would respond and say, hey, that's not really that healthy or working for you. So I've gone through studies throughout the years through different men and blood tests and cleansing therapies, liver flushes, and found a really responsible way for me is the somatic psychological practice of getting it into the conscious mind, out of the subconscious, unconscious field, into the conscious mind repetitiously until I noticed that feeling changed. And if you sit with it long enough and presence it, there can be a really distinct feeling in the body and the mind that energy which we had in the field of judgment, especially fear or anger, actually translated into a physical energy of integration and power that was actually palatable and tangible and much more practical for my way of life. So it was part of this leading into more responsible, mature, safe ways too, as the masculine, to process these unintegrated emotions, right? How safe would a woman feel if every time you felt angry or you were having a blow up, you just screamed your head off and started smashing the walls? Maybe a couple times, but most women or children wouldn't be that much of a safe space, right? So I always look at that. However I'm processing or walking in my life, would a child feel safe with how I'm needing to process or integrate this energy? Maybe if I sat down and explained to them this pain that I'm feeling, but how much would they really understand, right? So, or a woman or a family. So the translation of safety also comes through how we're perceiving things in our environment, our reality, from children, women as a masculine consciousness, and then how that effect might come through in our reality of how we're translating and processing our energy or information. So it's just part of these signposts and practices that I've learned that can a little more palatable and safer for our own physical health, but also for the children and for the women in our reality. Accountability practices, yeah.
Yeah, it's really honor and appreciate you for sharing that as well. Because there's an importance there. There's an importance of like being accountable in that way for the feelings and emotions that you have, maybe your ancestors have had, maybe your lineage in some ways has had, and being able to be with that in a really good way, being accountable to yourself in that way, to be with that in a good way, to not cause more hurt, to not cause more harm, to not cause more suffering. And also just the level of awareness. I just really appreciate that in you of, hey, maybe this anger and this adrenaline is not the best way to be with this. Maybe getting more angry isn't actually the way to be with this. Maybe there's a different way. And thank you for sharing that with everybody who's listening, of like a way to access that particular emotion. I love what you shared. It's not just usable with anger, but also fear, maybe sadness, maybe grief, maybe loss, maybe, joy as well. In some ways, like I'm joyful, and really feeling that in the body. And it just sounds like I just really appreciate the practicality of that, because I think it really gives the people who are listening like, oh, okay, I can do this. Like, this is something that I can do to take a step in this way to really bring what might not be known in the body, maybe known about in the mind just briefly, but really bring that to light so that they can let that move through them. So they can let go of that. Well, I guess let go of that. They can stop carrying that piece and allow their body, allow their being to return to maybe harmony or homeostasis or a state of regulation, a state of clarity. And it's just like, it's a beautiful practicality as well with like the amends, and just to be able to actually like, here's something you can do. I think that is, it's, or at least in my world, it like when I first came up, there was kind of like, you look for the roadmap of like, okay, how do I walk this path? And every path is completely different for every single person. And it's a path that you get to navigate yourself. And it's really good to have those tools. It's really good to have tools to be able to bring that stuff into awareness, to be able to move through that. And so I appreciate and just honor that in you and your ability to do that, your ability to have done that, and your ability to also keep doing that. I think it's just really beautiful and a demonstration of what it means to be being human in some ways. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
In all the ways.
Yeah. And so how many more ways can we be present to actually being fully human, right? In the beingness. I find so much more in the beingness than the doing. So much more of a human being than a human doing. But there's something we've talked about as well, this beingness of presence, that when we're attending the presence within our human being, we're allowing the connection of our God self within, or that which is its individuated expression of God through us, to actually, upon our behalf and through God's expression, live a life of beauty and love, rather than this idea or momentum of, I have to do, to create, to get. Can we recognize how much we actually receive and get from just being, right? I know that's something that we as men want more of in our lives, to actually just have more time being, so we can, in that being, do for ourselves what we need to do so we can show up for our work or our children too, right?
What I hear in this is to bring it back to like this conversation we talked about around suffering. And one of the natures of suffering is that it teaches us. And what I found in my own life is that when I really sit with my suffering, it will always dissolve at some point, because the truth of my being is more powerful than the suffering, always, 100% of the time. And if it's not more powerful, then it means maybe that's not suffering, but something else, who knows? So it's like, in that, when we start to see the value of suffering, start to see how suffering has value.
Yeah.
And seeing the value of what others can bring through their shadows. And so, for example, with what Dane was sharing about with his dad, and seeing the value in his dad's choice, the value for his dad and what that was about, and then the value of what that has brought into Dane's life, the lessons and teachings. It's like, I see suffering, any suffering we have, any karma we have, I like to imagine it like a big thick ball of like rock or stone or compacted dirt. And the process of releasing and integrating and clarifying that suffering is to peel back the layers, to chip away at whatever that hard exterior is. And 100% of the time, from my own experience, can't say it's true for everyone, but in my own experience, when I do that work, which is what we're talking about, the self-inquiry work, the sitting with it work, the loving it work, the different tools and techniques, that ultimately what's within that is a jewel or a gem, some sort of like gold nugget or like a little emerald or a little ruby, and you clean it off, and then you have this beautiful little thing, and you put it in your heart, and you have a little jewel in your heart, and then that becomes something that you carry with you. And every time that's what happens, and we're like coal miners, just like mining coal and finding the diamonds in the coal. And so there's great value in suffering. There's tremendous value in that work. And in that experience of the tools are interesting, because the tools are this relative technique, and some tools are more effective than others. However, ultimately, the most powerful thing is what moves through the tool. So if you can connect with God's truth within your being and be dropped into your true nature, whatever tool or technique you use will be like superpowered. And you just have to then find the tools and techniques that are resonant with your unique blueprint, because what works for Dane might not work for me, and it might work for you, and it might work for that person and not that person, because we all have a different energy, a different resonance. And so when we find that space of truth, that space also called consciousness within ourselves, the all, the one, then whatever tool or technique we utilize will have great value, because it's being supercharged by this thing called consciousness. And so I found that to be really helpful for myself, because for a long time I was like, oh man, what's the best meditation technique or the best healing technique or this or that? And then I realized like, oh, it's really being, it's really presence. It's really like valuing the superpower that we have within us called our true essence, which is not really ours, and that shines through us. And so valuing ourselves is also the teaching of respect, which is what comes after bravery. That respect is what is based on value. It's like, if I give you, that's why if you give so much for free, sometimes people don't respect it. They don't value it. They're like, oh, you're just giving it away, I guess. It's like, if I just gave away, kind of like cubic zirconias, are like this diamond type thing that looks like a diamond, but it's not. Then you have diamonds. And if you just handed out cubic zirconias, then, or just handed out diamonds, people wouldn't value them. But because they're so rare, they're a higher value. And because cubic zirconias are more common, we don't value them. They're like a couple bucks or whatever. So all that being said, value is about respecting. So if you have a beater car that's just like 400,000 miles on it, it's only like $1,000. It's like, whatever, I'm just going to run this thing into the ground. You're not going to respect your car. If you buy a brand new car, you're like, oh, I don't even want one scratch on it, because you have such high value of it. And so we want to really learn to respect and value everything in this world that God created, to find value in it. Like your dad, who many people might say, oh, like, how could you say that? He abandoned you, or maybe you used to say that to yourself. But finding the value and finding that deep within him is God, acting out a story that was meant to catalyze you to become the person you are today. And so respect and valuing is really important. And it's important to respect and value God, to respect and value God in the many forms, creation, life. So many of us didn't respect our bodies, and then they become painful, or, a beater car of a body, So what I've found in respect is learning to value ourselves is so important. So many people don't value themselves and feel unworthy, and they find themselves in situations that match that energy. And those situations are usually disrespectful, abusive relationships, toxic dynamics, poor workplaces, So with what you were sharing, it's like respecting yourself, putting yourself first, valuing yourself. So respect is a really important teaching, and it's connected to the Mother Earth. It's connected to life, to woman, to the feminine qualities. And one of the greatest tragedies of our world is the disrespect towards women, and that women are not taught how to hold respect for themselves, and that the life-giving qualities that they have. And so that's sacredness of life. That's what we're talking about. And the gift that it is. So respect is a teaching that's very important for everyone. People who are more self-centered, often it's good to start respecting others. People who are going around lying, cheating, putting themselves first all the time. My hunch is most people who are listening to this are more like us, that we sometimes give a bit too much. We sometimes always care for others and overgive and forget, oh, I got to respect myself. Got to value myself. And not take on what's other people's stuff so much. So respect is a really important teaching. It's a really healing teaching, and it can be a real tough one. Really can bring us through some coals, so to speak. And it brings life. When we respect ourselves, it brings life. So there's kind of a natural progression of this podcast, which is this prayer of love. And the teaching after respect is humility. And humility is a theme we've talked about here. Humility is a theme of surrender and really handing our life over to our soul. It's like training our ego to be humble enough to say, oh, I'm an instrument for God. I'm not God. I'm an instrument for God. And that God does live within me. However, it's something, so it's hard to put it into words. That said, true humility is a wonderful thing. And it brings so much nourishment to our lives. And what I've found is that it puts us in a place of true beingness and aligns our doingness with the Creator's will, or with the will of our spirit, humbling ourselves to that divinity, that higher power, is what allows us to align our being and doing Because a lot of people want to do things and find their purpose and all these things, but they haven't really humbled themselves to God. So the beingness isn't really there underneath it all. And we want to always remember that everything is in devotion to that higher power. At least that's how I live my life, as best I can. And to give it over to God, to recognize that God is the one that works through us always. And so, yeah, the teaching of humility is really something we've talked a lot about too. The false humility and the true humility, and then arrogance. Like a lot of people see, oh, that person's not humble, they're so arrogant. But the person who's always putting themselves below others, which Dane was alluding to earlier, is also a form of false humility. Because humility is not about hierarchy. It's no one's above or below anyone. We're not better than anyone or less than anyone. We're all from the same divine source. So it's been a hard one for me. I've often been more in false humility, kind of like keeping myself small and keeping my energy small and containing myself, or like holding back my voice, or not fully expressing myself, or not sharing my medicine to the full capacity that I might be able to in service and devotion to God. And being, oh, I need to keep it small, and then that false sense of safety that comes from that. And realizing, oh, that's also my ego. That's like a subtle form of, I don't know if pride is the right word, but so bringing it out, sharing our gifts, the gifts that the Creator's given us. So humility is also a teaching of the Father. Respect is the mother, humility is the Father. And so a lot of people don't like the authority of that male, patriarchal, masculine energy that's been expressed on the planet as an authority over. And so they've rejected this concept of authority, rejected our own inner authority, rejected the authority of God, and rejected the authority of mom and dad and, the government and all these things, and fallen into arrogance and forgotten humility. Because humility, for me, is about listening to divine authority and always going to that place, to the authority of our higher self, to the Creator, to truth. And we're not always gonna, that's where we got it. We're gonna slip up a little bit, and we think we're listening to a higher authority, and then it's maybe some trickery of the mind, and then we play it out, and oh, okay, I guess I wasn't really listening, and then start to hone that discernment. And so when you live all those 6 teachings, wisdom unlocks. And that wisdom's already inside of us. We all are given the wisdom, the gifts, the abilities, the medicines. Wisdom is like this beautiful box inside of our hearts that's full of jewels and gems, all the jewels and gems we've accumulated over all of our lifetimes and all of our experiences through experiencing suffering, and all the gems that are in the middle of those rocks that we've mined are inside of our heart. That's what we take with us, those soul lessons. And they're in a box, but to unlock that box, we have to change how we live. To live in a loving way, which is all of these teachings combined. True, like as we're talking about on this podcast, these different teachings in a lived example of it, and how that brings us to unlock wisdom, where you unlock wisdom within your heart that's unique to you, and no one can tell you what that is. It's your own divine connection to that place. And that's the keeper of that is the Wolfe medicine, the keeper of wisdom. So wisdom is the center. And so when we unlock that wisdom, now we're really a leader of our life. Now we've really unlocked our medicine and our gifts and our divine connection. And now we can be what I like to call a true human being, someone who's in divine alignment with our Creator Source, with our Mother Earth, Divine Father, Divine Mother, with our own inner wisdom, and equipped with the tools and abilities to navigate life with love and to navigate our relationships with love. And that's what unlocks the human being for me, is my perception of it, is that we are meant to be this divine being in the human form, and that the masters and the Christ, the Buddha, certain people have come, God has come through certain people to show us our highest potential when we really embody love. And that's something I always aspire to. Like, recently I've been facing some situations with people that have been challenging. I don't want to get into like the details of it, but some difficult situations. And I often think, like, what would the Christ do, you know? And I don't know what he'd do. No one really does, but I figure he'd probably send some blessings. So I just go to that place as like, I want to be a divine being. I want to be that full embodiment to my highest potential. And so just meditate on it, reflect on it, imagine it, feel it, see it, call it in. Who do we want to be? So we talk a lot, Dane and I, about the I am presence. And for me, that's how we get to ground the being. The I am, what are we? I am a divine being. I am love. I am in service. I am, unconditionally loving. So that power to create the creative potential of humans, because we are made in the image of the Creator, which is the ultimate creative being. So we get to create. And that's at least my perception of it. That as human beings, the way it was shared with me is that we're given a purpose. Just like everything is given a purpose and that has been created, everything has a purpose, and the Creator gave humans a purpose too. And you can find the purpose within the name. In most cultures, the purpose is within the name. That's why spirit names are sacred. Every culture has them. You get a name, and that name expresses your unique imprint of a soul as to what your purpose is. So the name that we have in English is a human being, to be, and hue as this divine radiance, the hue of light, and man as like manas, as the ability to be self-reflective, to be self-aware, to be able to look inward and realize ourselves, or that in that it's like the experience of being separate that then brings us into deeper union. Because the union that like a cat has with God is like completely absorbed in God, but it has no awareness of that. Whereas when a human becomes fully absorbed in God, there's this radiance, there's this power to it because of our ability to self-reflect upon it. And so we're here, as I understand it to be, as a simple purpose to walk and talk with God or the Creator or our divine source, divine Creator, every second of our day, to be in that divine communion and to care for all that we're given to subsist off of, to live off of. So care for the earth, care for our vehicles, care for our home, care for our friends, our family, to take care of all that the Creator gives to us, respect it, and to live love, right? To live in a loving way is what unlocks that. So for me, that's what it means to be human. And that's really, I like to simplify things, to just get it down to its essence and simplify it. And then every culture has their own maps and tools and methods. They all have prayer, they all have meditation, they all have fasting, they all have dance and songs and stories. They all have some sort of rites of passage. And so initiations. So these are universal qualities beyond any tradition or dogma. Universality, which points to an essence and an original map that was given to us by the Creator, an original compass and map that the Creator gave to all peoples to keep us in balance and harmony. And part of those original teachings are these 7 teachings or 7 principles that we're talking about: truth, honesty, courage, bravery, respect, humility, and wisdom. you can find them everywhere because they're qualities. They're not a culture or a dogma, but qualities of being. They're an essence of being human. And they're the original way of living love, really. Because when we go through each of them, we live in that loving way. So they were shared to me by my elder, Apache elder, shared those with me. He learned them from his grandfather, and it goes back 20,000 years to the original peoples. And it was shared with me in that way that these are universal teachings. So, what does it mean to be human? That's how I see it, at least.
How do you guys feel about even ending that there? Do you feel like you have more to share? Do you feel like you want to share more?
Good.
You're good?
Unless you do. Do you feel like you want
I
to
feel
continue?
complete.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel complete with that too. That was a really beautiful way to end it. And a really beautiful way to just bring it all back, you know? I feel like you really brought it back to what it is to be human based on the 7 principles in that way, and how that just comes back to living a life of love. And that's at the heart of it. You know, and I really love that. I really think that's a really great place to end. I just want to say thank you guys. Like, thank you guys for coming on. Thank you guys for spending this time with me. Thank you guys for sharing your medicine, your gift, your being with everybody who's tuning in. It's a real gift, man. You men are gifts. I really feel that from the essence of my heart. And I say that from the essence of my heart. Really feel that. Yeah, thank you. And just before we rock and roll and go back into, that's a funny one, isn't it? I was going to say go back into life, you know, but life never ends and it doesn't stop here, right?
Are we out of life right now?
Yeah, I know, right? That's the separation. It never ends, you know? Yeah, I'd just love to know if there's any place where people can maybe find some information about you, if that exists out there, if you guys want to share that. If not, you guys don't necessarily have to either, but I just want to put that in the space. If there's any way that people can find you, to maybe connect with you, to share maybe appreciation or gratitude for being here, is there a space where people can find you? And is that something that you want?
Yeah, I can share. I'm on Facebook and Instagram, Robbie, Robbie J Bone. And yeah, I post on there here. Like, I kind of go through phases, you know, of living life. And like right now I'm in this phase of just like being full on in like the ceremony and Dane and just having him here, and it's kind of forgot about the online world. That said, I like to stay current there. And then I also have a website, robbiejbone.com, that I have some of my offerings and whatnot on there. And yeah, Vancouver Island, that's where I live. So it's a good place to find me too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Nice. Haven't had much of a social media interface much in this life. It's kind of, God willing, you'll find me. God's economy. And no, I do have a little bit, if there's any interest. It's usually very personal, connection, word of mouth, or clients and clients, ceremonies to ceremonies. I just love supporting people turning on their intuition. So if there's any interest in connecting with me, client-wise, or just friendship or sharing counsel about life, basically the only place I'm at really is on Instagram, Golden Wolf Love. And, or I might be in Vancouver Island, BC, but I'm in, where am I? Asheville, North Carolina right now after, so many years of travel. So, align with your sacred space and we will find each other. No. Yeah, it's all perfect. Feel really grateful to be here. Thank you so much for your presence. You're just heartfelt, infectious shine and fun, radiant energy. It's such a gift, and really enjoyed doing this. It's very rare that I get into the public eye or sharing. So your interest and inquiry and bringing this forward, I really feel good about just us in this share and counsel with each other. So thank you for that safe space and inspiration. It's part of what I feel like might be my little bit of coming out party from behind the scenes. We'll see. But thank you, brother. Bless your beautiful life, and really feel a sincere, genuine connection from your heart as a man, as a father. And yeah, it's really, really been inspiring. Yeah, deeply. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good to be alive and good to be here.
Yeah. Godcast 2 coming out soon. Right at you.
Sweet.
All right.
Awesome.
Cheers. Bless your life.
Cheers.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
bless your
Gratitude
life.
to all.
Yeah, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. We really appreciate you, and bless your beautiful life, is what Dane would say. And just thank you for being who you are and being the being that you are and the ripples that you send in your world.
Oh.